I almost forgot to unmute myself. Hello, everybody! Today, we're reading A Kiss of Dreams and Starlight by Mr. Bogath. I'm gonna go and find some, like, pretty music to go along with this. Let's see. Oops, didn't mean to play all. I'm gonna just look at it. I'm gonna have to pick something fairly long. I took off the last one, actually. I deleted the last one off my art stream. Because apparently I had muted audio for like the majority of like the art portion. So that playlist went away. I know I don't talk much during art, but you know, it was really lame to have that though, so. But I know that this relaxed movement channel has some pretty nice stuff. Might be a little bit too, like, I was thinking about something softer. Let's see what we got. Maybe I could find another one. Romantic background music. There we go. Okay, we're gonna play this one. We're gonna play it very low. Maybe that might be a little bit too low. There we go. Okay. So, A Kiss of Dreams and Starlight by Mr. Bogath. Actually, before I forget, let me make the link. There we go. And now we have that. Oh, well now it picked up. Okay. Justin sound one last time. If it mutes the audio, I'm gonna be so mad again. But anyway. A Kiss of Dreams and Starlight by Mr. Bogath. It's the 7th book in the Tales. Oh no, I forgot the series. Tales of Love and Magic, there you go. I remembered at the last second. You can check it on Amazon in my pinned comments. Mr. Bogath writes most of the time throughout the week in the morning, so you can check him out. Chapter 1. Asperia's fingers danced over the page of an ancient tome, her eyes hungrily devouring each and every word. She was a young woman with short, unkempt, raven hair framing her unremarkable features. Her fiery spirit and insatiable curiosity were tucked away behind a pair of lilac-colored eyes that seemed to almost burn with determination. However, life had dealt Asperia a challenging hand. Though her mind was unyielding, her body was not so strong. Her left leg was twisted inward at the knee, causing a pronounced limp, which required her to use a cane. Her arms and fingers had limited mobility, making many tasks difficult. Despite facing these obstacles at 22 years old, she refused to let her physical limitations define her or hold her back. As headmaster Theris's assistant at the prestigious academy, Asperia was responsible for cataloging, organizing, and transcribing important texts for scholars to use. It was a role many would find tedious, but she reveled in the rare opportunity it provided her to use the Academy's vast wealth of knowledge. Only men could be official scholars at the Academy, a rule established long ago and maintained at the behest of Nethelos royalty. Although Headmaster Theris disagreed with the rule privately, he had very little leverage to fight it publicly. Despite not being a formal student, she had full access to everything the Academy had to offer. Asperia, Headmaster Theris called out, his deep voice resonating throughout the library. Have you finished cataloging those scrolls I entrusted to you this morning? Yes, Headmaster, Asperia replied, carefully closing the book she had been engrossed in. She turned towards him, her gaze meeting his kind, gray eyes. Excellent work, as always, he praised, a warm smile gracing his lips. Asperia felt a swell of pride at his compliment. It meant the world to her that someone as wise and respected as Headmaster Theus recognized her efforts. More than that, she'd become to see the headmaster as a father figure through her years at the academy, having never known her real father. At least, she couldn't remember him anymore. Thank you, Headmaster, she said softly, her cheeks flushing slightly. It's only a simple task, really. No need for praise. Simple to you, perhaps, Headmaster Theris said with a chuckle. It was hardly a bribe large enough to convince other scholars to do it before you came into the academy. Inwardly, Asperia's heart ached with longing. She knew that her work was valuable, but she couldn't help but yearn for something more. A chance to see the world, and to show the world that she was not defined by her physical disabilities. As much as she loved to study inside the safety of the academy, her heart longed for exploration and wild adventure. Headmaster, Asperia began hesitantly, I've been wondering if there might be an opportunity for me to take on a greater role within the academy, beyond its walls. Headmaster Theris regarded her thoughtfully for a moment before responding. Asperia, your determination and intelligence are undeniable, perhaps unmatched, but you must be aware of your physical limitations. I know you well enough to know the roles you seek, but let me think on it. It's not my intention to confine you to the academy. I only worry for your safety and would prefer it if you didn't always push yourself so hard. Thank you, Headmaster. I know, Asperia replied, bowing her head gratefully. As she walked away from him, her cane tapping rhythmically against the floor, she let out a deep sigh and sat down to read through another text. This time, something more for pleasure. Alchemical Theory. Though by this point, she'd probably read more than half the books in the library and sat in on lectures of every subject. Were it not for her gender, she'd be one of the most accomplished scholars in Nethelos. Though, fame was not something she cared about. Enjoying a bit of quiet and solitude only in the early mornings or late evenings was a highlight of her day. Asperia bit her lip, focusing on the large book before her. The library's hushed atmosphere was a sanctuary for her thoughts, and she found solace in the pages of knowledge that surrounded her. Her fingers traced the intricate diagrams, her keen mind absorbing their secrets. Look at her, whispered a noblewoman to her young son as they passed by Asperia's table. Hideous with that twisted leg. Don't get too close, dear. We don't want to catch whatever she has. You'd think they have standards, even for servants. The boy stared openly at Asperia's cane and leg brace with a grin, his eyes wide with curiosity and fear. A cold wave of anger washed over her, but she swallowed it down, forcing herself to focus on the text before her. She would not let their cruelty define her. At least, she would try. After taking notes on the relevant information from the book and taking a deep breath to steady herself, Asperius approached Headmaster Theris's office to have her leg brace adjusted. As he worked on the mechanism, Asperius shared her recent findings on energy transference theory, her words tumbling out with enthusiasm. She was comfortable pouring these rants out to the headmaster, since he had always been genuinely interested in her thoughts on all things academic. Remarkable, Asperia, Headmaster Theris said, his eyes twinkling with pride as he finished the painful adjustment of the brace of her leg. Perhaps our focus has been too narrow on this particular subject. I do not consider there'd be angles left to explore after all these years. Your intellect never ceases to amaze me. Thank you, Headmaster. I just wish others could see past my ugly appearance. Asperia confessed, her voice tinged with bitterness as her eyes lingered on the bulky brace. It had given her theory to straighten her leg over time while giving her leg much-needed support. She and the headmaster had come up with the idea together, but the near-constant agony made her question whether it was even worth it. Give them time, my dear, he replied gently. Some will come around, and some won't. You have already accomplished so much. The visiting nobles had words, I assume. They don't treat me much better. I'll tell you that. Their conversation was interrupted by a sudden commotion outside. Curious, they stepped out onto the balcony to see students and faculty alike staring upwards, their faces awash with wonder. Following their gazes, Asperius' breath caught in her throat as she beheld an object plummeting through the sky, its fiery tail painting the heavens like a streak of molten gold. By the gods, Headmaster Theros whispered, his voice shaking with wonder. A falling star, crashing down? In my entire life, I've never seen such a thing. But our expedition team doesn't return for 2 more days. Headmaster, please allow me to investigate, Asperia pleaded, her heart pounding with excitement. I know I can do it. Asperia, you're certainly eager, Headmaster Theros replied, his tone cautious. Are you sure you can handle this on your own? She looked him directly in the eye, undeterred by his concern. Yes, I know I can. I'm the most qualified in the evaluation of unknown material. This is a rare opportunity, and I want to take advantage of it. My life is sure to be a short one, Headmaster. We both must accept that. I want to live it fully. The headmaster studied her for a moment before sighing. I have no doubt about your intellect or your determination, Asperia, but your leg, you won't be able to ride a horse with a brace. Are you sure you can manage without it? It's a journey through the woods, and the terrain will be challenging. Asperia felt her cheeks flush with frustration as valuable time passed, but she refused to let his well-meaning concerns deter her. I've studied the maps of the area and have them memorized. I'm confident I can manage with a brace off if I'm careful. Headmaster Theros studied Asperia's face, her eyes shining with determination and intelligence. He could not deny that she had earned the right to take on this challenge, despite his concerns for her safety. With a deep breath, he made his decision. Very well, Asperia, he said, his voice firm but gentle. I grant you permission to investigate the fallen object. However, there are some conditions that you must adhere to, and they are not negotiable. Asperia nodded, eager to listen and accept any guidelines he deemed necessary. Firstly, you will possibly encounter the church at some point during your investigation. You must act as a representative of our academy. Your actions will reflect upon us all, so it is crucial that you conduct yourself with integrity, respect, and wisdom. Of course, Headmaster, Asperia replied earnestly. Secondly, he continued, you must remain cautious in your endeavors. The world outside these walls is vast and unpredictable, and I fear that your eagerness may blind you to potential dangers. Do not rush it. I understand your concern, Headmaster, and I promise to be careful, she assured him. Lastly, Headmaster Theros added, more harshly this time, should you encounter anything beyond your capabilities, do not hesitate to return and seek guidance. No discovery is worth risking your life for, even though I'm certain you'll disagree. Asperia absorbed the gravity of his words, feeling their weight settle into her shoulders. She vowed to heed his advice, and with a determined nod, she replied, I promise to honor your trust and be a proper representative of the Academy, Headmaster. Very well, he concluded, a small smile gracing his features. Be safe, Asperia. After enduring the removal of her brace, she prepared to depart from the familiar grounds of the Academy, a heady mix of anticipation and trepidation swirling within her. Her heart beat rapidly in her chest, like the wings of a hummingbird, as she considered the magnitude of her first field mission. This was her opportunity to prove herself, not only to the Academy, but also to the snooty nobles. It would surely infuriate them to know a crippled servant like her made such an exciting discovery alone, a young woman, a commoner, and not even an official student of the Academy. She borrowed a horse from the stables and was on her way. Stay focused, Asperia whispered to herself, running her fingers over the intricate patterns on her leather satchel. This is your chance. As she passed through the gates, the world opened up before her like a fantastical tapestry. Vibrant colors sparkled in the sunlight. Rich, verdant grasses danced as she rode through them, and the scent of blooming wildflowers filled the air with a sweet, intoxicating aroma. Despite her nerves, Asperia couldn't help but marvel at the beauty surrounding her. Keep breathing, she reminded herself, inhaling deeply to steady her racing heart. You can do this. And with each step forward, Asperia felt her fears fade, replaced by a fierce determination to grasp this opportunity with both hands and make the most of it. It was time for her to carve her own path, and to prove that she was so much more than the sum of her physical limitations. Her journey led her through a dense forest, the vibrant foliage providing a verdant canopy that shielded her from the sun. The air was alive with the symphony of birdsong, punctuated by the rhythmic crunch of leaves beneath her horse's hooves as she pressed onwards. Focus on what you can achieve, she reminded herself, her thoughts swirling like autumn leaves caught in a breeze. The more information I gather, the better equipped I'll be to present my findings to the Academy. As she rode, Asperia mentally rehearsed her plan for investigating the fallen object. She would carefully examine the area surrounding the impact site, noting any changes to the environment or anomalies that might provide clues to its origin. Her keen observation skills and analytical mind would serve her well, allowing her to draw connections that others might overlook. If her theory on star composition was correct, there should already be small fragments to collect without needing to further damage anything. She would present her findings not only as evidence of her abilities, but also a testament to her perseverance, the culmination of years spent overcoming adversity and proving her worth against all odds. Let them doubt me if they wish, she thought, her heart swelling with a fierce resolve. I will show them just how wrong they are. As the day wore on, Asperia's focus never wavered, her eyes scanning the landscape for any signs of the fallen object. When at last she caught sight of a smoldering crater in the distance, her pulse quickened, the anticipation of discovery coursing through her veins like liquid fire. Time to reveal your secrets, she murmured, her voice barely audible above the rustling grasses. She urged her horse toward the crater, but he would not obey her command. The horses weren't conditioned to get this close to something they perceived as dangerous. The rest of the distance will have to be covered on foot. She sucked in a deep breath, knowing that even these few steps would be a monumental task, and dismounted. She growled in response to the surge of intense pain, but held her tears inside. Before she could react, her horse bolted back in the direction of the academy, leaving her stranded. She sighed and couldn't help but giggle at the absurdity. One problem at a time, she reminded herself. First, the object. Then I'll figure out a way to get back. That's the end of chapter 1. So we already got some star happening. We got a meteorite. I have a feeling Mr. Bogath made Asperia off a, like a certain Witcher character, you know? That's what I feel like. Take a few sips of water here before I move on to the next chapter. Oh, you mean Yennefer? Yeah. I think the lilac eyes and like the twisted leg gave it away. just a little bit. Just a little bit. But since this is a Yuri, not complete coincidence, trust me, Bluff. But since this is a Yuri, there's no Geralt. maybe you should have made the other person like a female Geralt. Anyway, moving on. Chapter 2. The Seal Star Speaker knelt in front of the heart of the crumbling church. She had inherited this broken institution when her parents were assassinated by King Salahan when traveling to Velmar to oppose his plans to bolster Velmar's military. After convincing neighboring kingdoms, Velmar planned to expand its territory. The king believed their opposition was orchestrated on behalf of another kingdom, a charge they vehemently denied until their dying breath. But even she wasn't sure who spoke the truth. Her parents' greed had become the gossip of anyone who discussed the church, after all. While she wished she could be sadder about their passing, she had barely known them. They'd wanted a son, and she was treated as little more than an inconvenient mouth to feed. Girl is too manly to gender swap. I don't know. You could have had. I feel like you could have had like a. I mean, could have had like a masculine female. Stars above, Lucia whispered, her voice barely audible as she bowed her head in prayer. Guide me on the path to restore our church's honor and reclaim the faith of our people. For hours she remained in that position, her devotion unwavering despite the weight of her responsibilities pressing down upon her like the stones of the church walls. You did do a muscle mommy in the last book. As she prayed, the flickering candlelight painted shadows on her face, revealing the depth of her determination and sorrow. Lucille, a gentle voice broke through her meditation, accompanied by the soft patter of footsteps on the weathered floor. Priscilla, Lucille murmured, opening her eyes to see her best friend standing before her, concern etched in her delicate features. What brings you here? You've been praying so long it concerned us, Priscilla admitted, kneeling beside Lucille. I thought you might need company. Thank you, Lucille said, offering a sincere smile. But I must focus on my duty as a speaker. Does that mean shutting out those who care for you? Priscilla asked, her words both tender and pointed. Of course not, Lucille replied, her heart warmed by Priscilla's unwavering support. I only wish to ensure I do not fail our people. So much is at stake. Then let us share your burden, Fran interjected, stepping forward from the shadows with an eerie eagerness, placing a hand on Priscilla's shoulder, which she quickly shrugged away. Together, we can restore the church's glory. Frond, Lucille acknowledged him with a nod, careful not to let her discomfort at his infatuation with Priscilla show. She'd already made her concerns known to them both, after all. Your dedication is appreciated. Besides, Priscilla added, her voice full of hope, the stars have never truly abandoned us. They're still shining brightly above, guiding our path. Indeed, Lucille agreed, glancing upward at the star-studded sky visible through the gaping holes in the church roof. She rose from her kneeling position and faced her small group of followers who had also appeared. Those who had remained devoted to their celestial beliefs, even as most others had forsaken them. The crumbling church of Nethalos stood as a testament to the years of neglect and lack of resources. Holes in the roof allowed the sun's rays to penetrate the dim interior, casting beams of light onto the broken pews that haphazardly littered the nave. The once grand altars had succumbed to decay, their intricate carvings barely recognizable beneath layers of dust and grime. Lucille, Priscilla spoke softly, her voice echoing through the desolate space. We'll find a way to restore our home. I know, Lucille replied. She looked around at the devastated church, feeling the weight of her inherited responsibility. The stars have guided us thus far, and they will not abandon us now. As if in response to her words, a brilliant light streaked across the sky outside the gaping holes in the church walls. The congregation gasped collectively, awestruck by the celestial display. The flaming line grew larger and brighter, the trajectory unmistakable. It was headed straight for them. Everyone, take cover! Lucille shouted, her heart pounding as adrenaline surged through her body. She dove behind a toppled pew, shielding herself from the impending impact. The ground shook violently as the fallen star struck the earth nearby, its force causing debris to rain down from the church's weakened structure. Dust filled the air, stinging Lucille's lungs as she coughed and struggled to breathe. Her mind raced, desperately searching for an explanation for what had just transpired. Is everyone all right? Lucille called out, her voice wavering with concern. As the dust settled, she could see Priscilla emerging from behind a pillar, Frond close on her heels. He had shielded her from the falling debris and was bleeding from his upper arm. Their expressions mirrored her own, a mixture of fear and awe. By the stars, what was that? Priscilla asked, her eyes wide with wonder. Could it be a sign? Frond ventured hesitantly, his gaze flickering between Lucille and Priscilla. Lucille's heart swelled with hope at the possibility. As much as she feared the destruction it had caused, she couldn't deny that the fallen star was a marvel to behold. In that moment, she clung to the belief that this event was an omen from the heavens, a call to action for her and her followers. "Perhaps it is," she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. "And if so, we must answer it." The small congregation exchanged glances, their resolve strengthening with each passing second. Their devotion to the stars had never wavered, even in the face of adversity. And now they were presented with a tangible symbol of their faith, one that could potentially change the fate of their crumbling church. "Let us go forth," Lucille declared, her eyes locked on the smoldering impact site visible through the holes in the church's walls. "Together, we shall uncover the meaning of this fallen star and prove to the world that our faith is not misplaced." With hearts ablaze and spirit renewed, Lucille and her followers ventured out into the fading light, ready to embrace whatever challenges and revelations awaited them on the path ahead. Once outside, they turned back to survey the damage. The church was a pitiful sight, its once proud facade now marred by destruction. Tears welled in Lucille's eyes, yet amidst the devastation, a flicker of hope ignited within her heart. She believed that the fallen star was an answer to her prayers, a sign from the heavens that it was time to restore the church and its reputation. "Look at what has happened," she said, her voice trembling with emotions. "I know this seems like a disaster, but I can't help but see it as a message from the stars. They have heard our prayers and sent us this omen." "An omen?" Priscilla asked, her brow furrowing in confusion. Lucille clenched her fists, her resolve hardening. "We have always believed in the power of the stars, even in these times when the world has turned its back on us. This is not... This is our chance to show them the truth. That our faith is not misplaced, and that we can still help the people." "Lucille's right," Frond agreed, his eyes wide with awe. "We've been praying for a sign, and now we have one. We can't let this opportunity pass us by." Lucille stood before her followers, her eyes shimmering with determination. "I will set out to investigate the fallen star," she announced, feeling a wave of purpose wash over her. "Perhaps it holds the answers we need to restore our faith and rebuild the church." "Let us accompany you, Star Speaker," Priscilla said, her voice firm and resolute. The unwavering loyalty in her eyes was comforting, and Lucille couldn't help but smile at her best friend. "Very well," Lucille agreed. "Priscilla, Frond, you shall journey with me. The rest of you stay behind and salvage what you can from the wreckage. Gather tools and materials. We shall begin the restoration upon our return." As they set off on foot, Lucille allowed herself a moment to drink in the sights and sound of the island of Nethalos. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying the scent of the damp earth and blossoming flowers, while the sun kissed her skin with a gentle warmth. It was as if the land itself was encouraging them on their quest, urging them forward with a newfound sense of purpose. "Star Speaker," Frond began, his voice hesitant. "I know it's what everyone needs to hear, but do you really believe this is an omen?" Lucille closed her eyes, reaching deep within herself to find the faith that had been renewed by the fallen star. "Yes," she replied, her voice steady and strong. "This is our turning point. We must trust in the power of the stars, just as they have trusted us to rise to the challenge." The three companions pressed on. Each step brought them closer to uncovering the meanings of the falling star, and each moment of the journey renewed their sense of purpose. They ventured through verdant forests and crossed sparkling streams. "Lucille," Priscilla murmured, "I know we'll succeed in restoring the church. I can feel it, deep inside. With or without a divine intervention, we'll find a way." "Your dedication is a beacon to us all, Priscilla." Lucille smiled at her friend, feeling warmth bloom in her chest. "Star Speaker," Frond chimed in, his gaze steady upon her. "I'll stand by you too. And Priscilla." "Thank you, Frond," Lucille nodded, wanting to give him the benefit of the doubt. "We must rely on each other in these times of uncertainty." "I'm sure a fallen star is beautiful," Priscilla mused, her eyes reflecting the golden light of the sun. "If only we could share this moment with everyone back home." "Indeed," Frond agreed, his voice tinged with a hint of desire as he glanced at Priscilla. "Maybe even half as beautiful as you." An uncomfortable silence settled over the group. Priscilla's hands gripped her dress as she focused her gaze on the ground. Lucia frowned, aware of Fran's inappropriate advances toward her friend. Though she appreciated his support in their quest, she worried for Priscilla. One moment he seemed well-meaning and kind. The next, he would make those same comments. Priscilla had tried telling him she wasn't interested, and that his persistence made her feel uncomfortable. That seemed to do little to discourage him. Lucille had offered to send him away, but Priscilla insisted he was a good person where it mattered most. Perhaps she was right, but... Fran, let us keep our focus on the journey ahead, Lucille chided gently, hoping to steer his attention away from Priscilla. Of course, Star Speaker. My apologies. Fran replied, his tone respectful even though his eyes lingered on Priscilla a few more moments. As they pressed onward, the trio found themselves navigating treacherous terrain. Steep slopes and dense foliage threatened to slow their progress, but their determination never wavered. They relied on one another, their shared purpose uniting them. Lucille, watch your step, Priscilla warned, reaching out to steady her friend as they traversed a particularly slippery slope. Thank you, Priscilla, Lucille breathed. Allow me to assist you as well, Frond offered, extending a hand to Priscilla as she navigated the difficult terrain, even though she hadn't asked for it, nor was she in any danger of slipping or falling. His touch lingered, and Lucille couldn't help but feel a stronger pang of irritation. Frond, she said more firmly this time, we must pay careful attention in this part of the forest. As if in response to her warning, a low growl echoed through the trees, sending a shiver down Lucille's spine. A massive bear emerged from the undergrowth, its fur matted and eyes wild with hunger. Immediately, Franz stepped between the two women and the beast, his sword drawn and glinting in the fading light. Back, he commanded, his voice strong and steady as he waved the weapon menacingly. The bear hesitated, then retreated into the shadows with a final snarl. Are you two all right? Frond asked as he sheathed his sword. Yes, we're fine, thanks to you, Priscilla stammered. Thank you, Frond, Lucille admitted, her earlier misgivings momentarily forgotten. We are grateful for your bravery. Only fulfilling my duty, Star Speaker, he replied humbly, his eyes softening with what appeared to be genuine care. The fallen star was nearby. The billowing smoke left little doubt of that. Are you sure we should approach it yet? It could be dangerous, Priscilla said. Trust in the stars, my friend, Lucille replied, her gaze scanning the trees for any sign of a clear path through. They have guided us this far and will not lead us astray. We'll be cautious. Frond, ever vigilant, marched alongside them, his sword at the ready. Though he remained quiet, his eyes flicked from side to side, watching for any sign of danger. Lucille found herself grateful for his presence, despite his concerning missteps. As they pressed on, the trees began to thin, giving way to a vast expanse of open land. At its center lay the fallen star, nestled within a shallow crater. The celestial object shimmered with an otherworldly light, casting an ethereal glow upon the surrounding clearing. A sense of awe washed over Lucille, her fingers itching to reach out and touch the cosmic gift before her, almost as if compelled to. By the stars, Priscilla breathed, her own wonder echoing Lucille's thoughts. Let us approach cautiously, Lucille advised, her excitement tempered by the knowledge that they were treading on unfamiliar territory. We do not know what power lies within this fallen star, or danger. Agreed, Frond nodded, his grip tightening on the hilt of his sword. We must remain vigilant. As they moved closer to the star, the air around them seemed to hum with energy. The others felt it too, exchanging uneasy glances as they continued forward. Despite the unease, their curiosity drove them onward, the need to uncover the fallen star's secrets overwhelming any lingering fear. Lucille, look! Priscilla exclaimed suddenly, her voice barely above a whisper. She pointed towards a figure in the distance, standing at the edge of the clearing. A woman with dark hair stood there, her back to the group as she examined the fallen star from a distance. As if sensing their presence, she turned to face them, her eyes locking on Lucille's with an intensity that made her heart skip a beat. The stranger's gaze felt equally strange and familiar, as though promising answers to questions Lucille had yet to ask. Who is she? Frond asked, his voice wary. I do not know, Lucille admitted, her pulse quickening at the sight of the mysterious woman. Likely she's an explorer from the academy. Then we must speak with her and explain why this is the church's jurisdiction, Frond insisted. No, Lucille said firmly, determined not to walk the same path as her parents did. We will not make an enemy of someone who might otherwise be a friend, even if we mean well. Lucille took a step into the clearing. End of chapter 2. Go get a drinky drink. I have my hot tea and like a half gallon of water here. I take a sip of the water to like wet everything, and then I take a sip of the hot tea to like clear out my throat a bit. It's that time of year where everybody gets a snotty nose. Moving onward. Chapter 3. Asperia clenched her teeth as she leaned on her cane, her breathing heavy from the effort it took to move. Her leg ached more than it ever had in her life, and her cane was doing little to keep her upright and stable in the soft soil. Her resentment and determination mixed together like a storm inside her, swirling with every glance at the approaching group of church members. Their reputation preceded them, and the air of entitlement that seemed to follow only served to fuel Asperia's bitterness. Those privileged fools, she muttered as she staggered around the smoldering spear. Even though they had yet to say a word to her, she was convinced their intentions were far from benevolent. No doubt they believed this strange object was some kind of gift to them from the heavens, for them alone. Her gaze fell upon her own twisted legs, a constant reminder of the injustice life had dealt her. While others could walk unencumbered, she was forced to drag herself through the halls of the academy, enduring whispers and taunts from visiting nobles at her expense. But fire burned within her. She refused to be seen as anything less than her full worth. "Hello there," called out Lucille, her voice soft and gentle, but it only grated on Asperia's nerve amidst the pain her body was racked with. She braced herself, her jaw set in furious indignation. "I'm a little busy for small talk," Asperia snapped, her eyes narrowing. "My name is Asperia, and I represent the Academy. If you aren't careful, this object could harm you. Or, even worse, you may harm it." Lucille blinked, taken aback by the hostility, but she maintained her composure. She'd always tried earnestly to put herself in the shoes of others, and seeing Asperia's physical state, along with her obvious agony, made her words make more sense. "We didn't come with the intention of stopping you from your research. In fact, now that we know that you're here, your academic knowledge will be invaluable." She paused, searching for the right words. "This discovery is important to us all. I'm Lucille, and this is Priscilla and Frond. I'm sure you've guessed we're from the church." Asperia scoffed, unwilling to believe they sought her help. She studied the faces around her. They seemed sincere, but the young woman couldn't shake her suspicion. Everyone always acted sincere until the moment her guard fell. "Fine," she finally said with a sigh. "Let's speculate." There was something in Lucille's eyes that felt genuine, something that made Asperia question her assumptions. She didn't look at her with pity, or as a lesser person. She behaved as though she hadn't even noticed her legs, or other twisted features. For the first time, in as long as she could remember, a stranger looked at her as a human being, and not a collection of physical disabilities to be gawked at. Perhaps, she thought, I've been too quick to judge them. And for the first time, she allowed herself to entertain the possibility that this meeting might lead to something other than disappointment. They both looked at the fallen sphere, half buried in the soft earth, its surface like a mirror of polished metal. "Tell me, what do you believe this is?" Asperia asked, eyeing the orb with curiosity. "Physically, perhaps a fallen star. Spiritually, I'd like to think," Lucy replied, her voice hushed with reverence, "an omen from the heaven that's our hope. That's what I've been praying for every day." Asperia raised an eyebrow, skeptical despite the undeniable allure of the object before her. Something certainly wasn't natural about it. It called to her, almost like a whisper. She reached out tentatively, her fingers hovering just above the sphere's gleaming surface. "Wait!" Frond ordered, his eyes wide with anger. "Don't touch it!" Asperia recoiled instinctively, her heart pounding in her chest. Her gaze darted between Frond and the sphere, her mind racing with questions and doubts. What harm could there be in merely touching it? And who was he to tell her that she couldn't? At first, she thought he could be concerned for her safety. But after looking into his eyes, it was clear that he was only being possessive of what he felt belonged to them and no one else. "Since when do you care what I do? Afraid I'll soil it with my impure hands," she snapped, her anger flaring within her. She resented the way he seemed to assume authority over her simply because he followed Lucille and her church. "Asperia," Lucille began, a note of caution in her voice. She was trying to be diplomatic. "We don't understand the power of the star, and we wouldn't want anything bad to happen to you." Her words were genuine, but they did little to quell Asperia's irritation. For all her life, people had treated her as if she were fragile, incapable of taking care of herself. She was tired of it, tired of being underestimated and dismissed. And so, with a defiant glare at Frond, she reached out once more and held her hand just above the surface of the fallen sphere. The air around them seemed to crackle and hum with energy, the forest falling silent as if holding its breath. Lucille watched in awe as Asperia's finger hovered over the contours of the orb, her expression unreadable. "Asperia," she whispered, her eyes fixed on the young woman before her. "What do you feel?" "Power," came the reply, soft and full of wonder, "like what I've only read about in stories. Perhaps even divine." "Step away," Frond warned again, his voice tight with barely restrained fear. "Whatever power it may hold isn't for you." "Frond," Lucille said gently but firmly, her frustration with the man clear in her tone. "We can trust in the wisdom of the stars. They have brought us here for a reason. There are no accidents in fate." "Perhaps," he murmured, unconvinced. He watched Asperia closely, his hand resting on the hilt of the sword, prepared for whatever might come. In that moment, Asperia knew she had a choice to make. She could heed the warnings of Lucille and Frond, or she could seize this opportunity. With a steely resolve, she looked into Lucille's eyes and made her decision. "I'm not afraid," Lucille said softly, the words like a promise between them. And then, taking a deep breath, she closed her eyes and allowed the power of the object to envelop her completely. As her fingers made solid contact with the sphere, a surge of energy rushed through her veins, spreading warmth throughout her body. The sensation was overwhelming, yet she embraced it fully, determined to prove herself and defy expectations. She had felt pain before, after all. Her entire life had been pain. What more could this object do to her that the world itself hadn't already done? Her heart raced as she felt the power coursing through her, leaving her breathless but exhilarated. The world around her vanished, replaced by an infinite void where only the mirror-like finish of the sphere stood out against the darkness. As she gazed at her reflection, she realized that this was her chance to remake herself into the person she'd always longed to be. Intuitively, she knew the nature of this power, as though she'd been born with it. Instinctively, she knew exactly how to use it. She focused her thoughts on her deepest desires. Asperia imagined herself standing tall and strong, free from the pain and limitations that plagued her for so long. As if responding to her will, her body began to change, the transformation unfolding before her very eyes. She watched in wonder as her legs grew straighter and stronger, capable of carrying her across great distances without faltering. Her arms became toned and muscular. She was now fit and athletic. Her face, once misshapen, softened into a serene expression of confidence and grace. Her hair, previously thin and brittle, cascaded down to her shoulders in lustrous waves, framing her newly sculpted, flawless features. "Is it truly me?" she whispered, scarcely able to believe the transformation she had undergone. Yet, the image reflected in the sphere's surface assured her that it was indeed her own. With a final thought, she willed magical powers to manifest within her, infusing her very essence with the unlimited potential for greatness. As she did so, the sphere shifted in response to her desires, its form altering to become a magnificent sword, imbued with the very same power that now coursed through her. "Thank you," she murmured, grasping the hilt of the weapon and feeling this familiar weight in her hand. I will not squander this gift. And with that, the void dissolved around her, returning to the world she left behind. Lucille, Priscilla, and Franz stared in disbelief at the new Asperia emerge from the transformation, her eyes radiant beauty and power now evident for all to see. Lucille's eyes widened with shock, her heart pounding as she tried to make sense of what just happened. Asperia! Priscilla breathed, her voice filled with a mixture of awe and uncertainty. She took a hesitant step forward, reaching out a hand as if to confirm that this transformed being was still the same person who was standing there just moments before, or if she was even real. Franz's face contorted with anger and fear as he stepped forward, his hands gripping the hilt of his sword. The consequences of Asperia's actions were unknown, but her newfound powers could pose a threat to them all. In his mind, she had stolen it from beneath them. The air around them seemed charged with danger, and yet Asperia stood boldly, unafraid. Don't move, he warned, his voice trembling slightly. If you so much as think about hurting Lucille or Priscilla, I won't hesitate to strike you down. Asperia's eyes flashed with mischief, a playful smile spreading across her lips. With a wave of her hand, she transformed Franz's sword into a writhing stake, which slithered out of his grasp and onto the ground. He stumbled back in shock. Really now, Asperia taunted, her chuckle ringing through the air. You thought that was a threat to me? Lucille's group exchanged wary glances, the full extent of Asperia's strange new power still a mystery. They had expected her transformation to have consequences, yet she'd bore them with a bold disregard that both fascinated and terrified them. Asperia, Lucille said cautiously, stepping closer to her. We don't know what touching this sphere has done to you. It might be best if we all try to stay calm. Stay calm? Asperia echoed, her eyes narrowing as she studied her surroundings. Franz took a step back, raising his hands in surrender. Fine, I made a mistake. I'm sorry. Asperia's gaze softened, but the fire in her eyes remained. She knew that her decision to touch the sphere had changed everything, and she was prepared to face whatever consequences lay ahead. Lucille continued to study Asperia, noting the strength and grace that now emanated from her. Is this a manifestation of your true wish? Asperia looked down at herself, considering the question. She met Lucille's gaze. You could say that, she said, her voice strong and clear as she stumped her foot into the ground, noting the complete absence of pain in her leg and the rest of her body, a sensation she had never known. Are you still the Asperia who was standing here just a moment ago? Priscilla asked softly. Asperia paused, considering the question. I am. The disabilities that held me back are gone now, replaced by something else. I guess you three might say the stars chose to give me this power. Then we shall stand by your side, Lucille declared, her words resolute as she accepted change before her. Together, we will uncover the truth behind this transformation and the destiny it has set in motion. The stars have chosen you for a reason. Though Lucille's calm was short-lived, she bent forward, suddenly overwhelmed by the images flooding her mind. Lucille's heart raced as she recalled the vision that had accompanied her touch of the sphere, now surging through her mind fully. Without realizing it, she had instinctively steadied herself to reach out a hand to help Asperia just as her transformation began, and it had done something to her, too. A vast, star-spilled sky stretched before her, and in the center of it all, Asperia shone bright, a celestial beacon guiding her through the darkness. But when Asperia looked at her in the vision, her eyes were full of tears and rage. What did it mean? Was their meeting predestined by the stars themselves, or was this merely an echo of the power now residing within Asperia? Lucille? Asperia's voice broke through her thoughts, drawing her attention back to the present. Apologies, I was lost in thought, Lucille admitted, her gaze wandering over the changes that had come over Asperia. Is everything all right? Asperia asked, concern frowning her brow. Yes, but Lucille trailed off, contemplating whether to share her vision with the newly transformed woman before her. She shook her head, deciding to keep her thoughts private for now. At least she could make more sense of what she'd seen. We should focus on the task at hand, The aftermath of Asperia's transformation had left the air charged with energy, the ground beneath them bearing scorch marks where the sphere had once rested. Asperia's... Sorry, I had turned the page. And it wouldn't turn. Asperia's body had undergone a remarkable change, her once slight frame now sculpted with lean muscle. The intensity in her eyes spoke of a newfound confidence simmering just beneath the surface. Very well, Asperia nodded, her voice steady and self-assured. This obviously wasn't a natural event. Whether it was the stars or something else, it goes far beyond human understanding of the world. Far beyond science. I'll accompany you back. And we'll discuss what happened here before I return to the academy. As they walked, Lucille couldn't help but steal glances at Asperia, her mind still grappling with the implication of her vision. Something deep within her told her that their fates were now deeply intertwined, but the specifics remained frustratingly elusive. Her internal struggle waged on, warring with her desire to protect and support Asperia through this strange new chapter of her life. Feeling so strong that Lucille was alarmed by them at first. Are you sure you're okay? Asperia asked, again noticing Lucille's furtive glances. Truthfully, Lucille began, hesitating for a moment before taking a deep breath and continuing. When I touched the sphere, I had a vision of you at the center of a vast, star-filled sky. You were furious and heartbroken about something. It was overwhelming. Asperia's eyes widened, her own curiosity now sparked. What do you think it means? I'm not certain, Lucille admitted, but I believe our destinies are somehow connected well beyond the events of today, and always have been. Connected, Asperia repeated, mulling over the idea. Before I might have laughed at such a thing, but now I'm not so quick to dismiss it. Whatever lies ahead, Lucille murmured, her hand reaching for Asperia's. We'll face it together. At first, Asperia was so alarmed by the touch that she nearly yanked her hand away. But something about it felt so natural that she questioned her sudden comfort. She found herself blushing despite the fact that this was surely how the Star Speaker behaved with everyone. Agreed, Asperia replied, her grip relaxing around Lucille's hand. I guess we're in this together now. Sonny decided to step on the keyboard, and he's trying to get my attention, like, real bad. What are you doing? He's gonna take over my model. That's the end of that chapter, and take another sip. Sonny, I don't want your butt in my face, though. Alright. Chapter 4. Let's see. How many chapters are in this book? I think it's always 16, but... Nope. This one is... Sonny, you made me lose it. He rubbed it and made me, like, drop all of it. Drop all the pages. It looks like there's 17 chapters. This is the longest by quite a bit, yeah. Well, I don't know. Usually I think they're like 15 or 16. But this one's 17 with the epilogue. But maybe the chapters are also longer. Okay. Chapter 4. Asperia and Lucille continued walking together ahead of Frond and Priscilla. Asperia was so caught up in the new world she was experiencing through a healthy body that she forgot they still held hands. Suddenly aware, she pulled away. Her cheeks felt warm, and she worried that Lucille would notice her blushing. Asperia, Lucille said, her voice soft. I know it doesn't really matter, but I'm a little ashamed to show you our church in its current state. Maybe I could help, Asperia mused, her brow furrowing in concentration, happy for the change of topic. A thought struck her, a sudden impulse. She focused inward, drawing on her newfound understanding of arcane magic and the whispers of power she felt stirring within her. Close your eyes, Lucille, Asperia instructed, her voice steady and confident. Lucille hesitated for a moment, but then complied. Asperia sucked in a deep breath, summoning the courage she knew she possessed. She reclaimed Lucille's hand, anchoring herself to the priestess as she envisioned the church in her mind. Even though she had never been there, she'd studied the maps carefully. She knew precisely where it should be. Let's take a shortcut, she whispered, and for a brief moment, a surge of energy coursed through her body. a torrent of raw power unlike anything she'd ever experienced before. And then, as if plucked by the past by an unseen force, they were gone. They reappeared inside the darkened nave of Lucille's church with a soft, almost inaudible pop. Ow, that's my finger. He bit my finger. Oh, and then he peeled out of here. I don't know if you heard that, but his food went off. And he scrambled away. I gotta find my spot again. They reappeared inside the darkened nave of Lucille's church with a soft, almost inaudible pop. The scent of damp stone and old incense filled Asperia's nostrils, and she could feel the rough texture of the ancient pews beneath her fingertips. They stood there for a few heartbeats, stunned by the sudden change in their surroundings. Asperia, Lucille breathed, her eyes wide with wonder as they adjusted to the dim light filtering in through the stained glass windows. How did you... I don't know, Asperia admitted, her voice trembling with a mixture of excitement and fear. She had never used any magic before, aside from the comparatively smaller trick of turning Fran's sword into a snake. Nothing as powerful and complex as teleportation. Yet there was no special process she had to follow. No long, complex incantation. She simply willed it, and it was. Her heart raced as she considered the possibilities this newfound power offered her, not just in aiding Lucille, but also in redefining her own place in the world. Your knowledge has become power, Lucille murmured, squeezing Asperia's hand. And with it you can do so much good in the world if you choose to. She stopped and frowned, her thoughts suddenly returning to Priscilla and Fran now alone together in the wilderness. But we mustn't leave Fran and Priscilla, and I'm concerned for their safety. I barely understand how I managed to teleport us here in the first place. What if something goes wrong? Asperia asked, second-guessing herself. Asperia, I have faith in you, Lucille insisted, her eyes meeting the younger woman's with unwavering conviction. The stars have chosen you, after all. A sigh escaped Asperia's lips as she mulled over Lucille's words. The priestess's belief in her abilities was both flattering and unnerving, and she couldn't help but feel the weight of responsibility settling upon her shoulders. Very well, she conceded, the reluctance evident in her tone. I will try to bring them here, but I make no promises beyond that. Thank you, Asperia, Lucille replied, her gratitude genuine and heartfelt. I know you can do this. Just focus your mind and trust in yourself. Nodding, Asperia closed her eyes and concentrated on the faces of Fran and Priscilla, envisioning them standing beside her within the hollowed walls of the church. She felt the now familiar surge of energy building within her, the power humming and crackling beneath her skin like a gathering storm. Please, she whispered, more to herself than anyone else. Let this work. As she spoke, she could feel the world shifting around her, bending to her will in a way that was both exhilarating and terrifying. And then, just as she had done when she had brought Lucille to the church, she reached out with her mind and drew herself to Fran and Priscilla. She appeared before them, but didn't even make an effort to warn them, as they both nearly fell backward with shock. She gripped their arms tightly. Deep breath, she said. With a loud whooshing sound, Asperia, Priscilla, and Fran materialized within the church walls. The suddenness of their appearance made Priscilla gasp in surprise, her eyes wide as she glanced around her surroundings. Fran, on the other hand, seemed more skeptical, his gaze narrowed as he scrutinized each detail. Asperia, is this really? Priscilla asked, her voice trembling slightly. Indeed, Asperia replied, allowing herself a small, satisfied smile. Don't recognize your own church? As they took in their environment, the even more dilapidated state of the building became evident. Once stunning stained glass windows were now shattered, their vibrant colors dulled by layers of grime and neglect. The wooden pews, which had once provided comfort and solace to worshippers, were now warped and rotting, groaning beneath even the slightest pressure. The once ornate altar was chipped and crumbling, its intricate carvings marred by time and disuse. Not to mention all the new damage from the star's impact. By the stars, Fran muttered under his breath, shaking his head in disbelief. This place has seen better days. I have no doubt about that, Asperia echoed softly, her heart aching for the lost beauty that the church must have once possessed. In her mind, she'd always pictured them living a life of privileged decadence. She had no idea it had become like this. But then, her determination flared anew. This was the perfect opportunity to test the limits of her power, and to show her intentions were good, not to just Lucille, but to herself as well. She would restore the church to its former glory, using her newfound powers for something meaningful and lasting. Not through a long, laborious process, but by this new magic that had been birthed into the world. "Lucille," she began, her voice firm and resolute, "I will help you rebuild this place, I promise." "Thank you," Lucille replied, her face lighting up with gratitude and hope. "But first," Asperia said, sealing herself for the task at hand, "we need to clean up this mess." As she spoke, she reached out with her powers, willing the dust and debris to dance through the air and away from the church walls. Priscilla and Frond watched in awe as the grime seemed to evaporate before their very eyes, revealing the hidden beauty that had been buried beneath. "Amazing!" Priscilla breathed, her eyes shining with admiration. "This is like a dream!" "Thank you," Asperia replied enthusiastically, blushing slightly at the praise. "But I'm just getting started, and you're perfectly awake." "Oh my," Lucille choked, her teary gaze sweeping over the repaired windows and polished pews. "I don't know what to say." Asperia stood before the crumbling altar, taking in the fractured frescoes and tarnished icons that adored the church's interior. As if time itself had waged a relentless war against this once sacred place, leaving it battered and scarred beyond recognition. "Let's begin with the foundation," she murmured, her eyes narrowing in concentration. With a subtle flick of her wrist, the cracked flagstones beneath her feet began to knit themselves back together, their jagged fissures sealing shut like the closings of a long-forgotten wound. "By the stars above, how is she doing that?" Frond whispered behind Priscilla, her green eyes wide with awe. Priscilla simply shook her head, too astonished to reply. "Watch and learn," Asperia said, a touch of smugness creeping into her voice. Her days of being dismissed were over. "All right, now the walls," Lucille chimed in, her damp eyes sparkling with anticipation. "Can you mend the cracks?" "Of course, I think." Asperia beamed, focused on the task at hand. She extended her hands outward. The dilapidated walls seemed to breathe new life, the cracks diminishing as the intricate frescoes regained their vibrant colors. "Absolutely extraordinary," one of the followers exclaimed, his voice hushed in reverence. The others murmured their agreement, their eyes wide with wonder as they took in the transformed sanctuary. Is this what magic feels like?" Lucille asked softly, her hand brushing against Asperia's arm in a fleeting moment of shared vulnerability. "The magic I read about in books wasn't nearly this powerful," Asperia admitted, her heart swelling with pride and satisfaction. "Or so beautiful." Lucille quickly looked away, brushing a strand of her hair behind her ear. "Regardless, your powers are a blessing, Asperia," Lucille said, her smile warm and genuine. "Thank you for sharing them with us." "Let's not get too sentimental," Asperia cautioned, her cheeks flushing a soft shade of pink. "There's still much work to be done." "Of course," Lucille agreed, her gaze lingering on Asperia for a moment longer before turning back to the rejuvenated church. "But we've made incredible progress today. I never dreamed it would look this magnificent again." "Neither did I," Asperia whispered, still in disbelief of what was happening, her heart thudding in her chest as she surveyed her handiwork. Now she felt that perhaps her powers were more than just a means of putting those who had looked down on her in their place. They were also a force for good, capable of healing the world around her, one broken piece at a time. The gathering crowd, still awestruck by the restored church, began to murmur amongst themselves. Their whispered words fluttered through the air like a flock of startled birds, reaching Asperia's ears and making her heart race with a mix of excitement and apprehension. "Could she be?" one of them ventured, casting a furtive glance in Asperia's direction. "Surely not," another replied, skepticism lacing their voice. "But there's no denying her powers." "Whatever she is, we're blessed to have her show us kindness," the third chimed in, nodding solemnly. While they continued to whisper, Lucille stepped forward, her presence commanding silence within the formerly dilapidated church walls. Her eyes were alight with determination. "Asperia," she declared, her voice ringing out like a clarion call. You have shown us what it truly lies within you, a force capable of miracles, and perhaps even more. I believe you've been chosen by the stars themselves to bring about a new change and hope to this world, to guide us into a new era. Asperia's breath caught in her throat as she processed Lucille's words. Chosen by the stars? It seemed impossible, yet part of her couldn't help but yearn for it to be true, and she had no better answer that could be drawn from science. Miracle bringer, someone whispered nearby, spreading the notion like wildfire among the gathered crowd. Could she be a goddess? Another asked, their voice trembling with equal parts fear and reverence. Enough! Asperia snapped, her cheeks burning with embarrassment. She struggled with being the target of so much attention, and the implication that she was somehow above these people. I'm no goddess, nor am I some miracle bringer. Your humility is commendable, Asperia, Lucille said, her voice gentle. Your words are also wise, but do not dismiss the possibility so readily. Your power is extraordinary, and these people, she gestured to the gathered crowd, they need something to believe in. Allow them that hope, at least until we have a better answer to give them. I know you and the others at the Academy will study this event and try to make sense of it. I welcome your knowledge and experience, despite my own bias. As Asperia looked into the eyes of those gathered, she saw a desperate yearning for guidance, for purpose. How could she deny them that? She swallowed hard, her pulse quickening as she mentally wrestled with the implications. Very well, she conceded, her voice barely above a whisper. If my abilities can bring hope to others, then let it be so. But I will not claim any title I haven't earned. I'm no goddess. Your actions speak louder than any title ever could anyway, Lucille replied, her smile warm and reassuring. Asperia nodded, her heart beating rapidly. With Lucille at her side, she felt perhaps she could face whatever challenges lay ahead. Having only just met the woman, she wondered what gave her such confidence. Amidst the hushed whispers and murmurs of wonder, she felt a deep sense of doubt, realizing she may have gotten carried away. She had been thrust into a role she had never sought, and yet it seemed as though fate had other plans for her. It would have been wiser to have consulted the headmaster first. Lucille, she began, her voice steady despite the turmoil within her. I have much to consider, and I must return to the academy to report all of this to the headmaster. But I promise, I will come back tomorrow to see you. Thank you, Asperia, Lucille replied, her gaze warm with gratitude. I understand that this is not an easy path, but know that you have our unwavering support. We shall await your return eagerly. Please let us know if there's anything we can do to help you adjust. Asperia nodded, her heart swelling with affection for the woman who had shown her such kindness. It was a connection she had never thought possible, and yet here she stood, on the precipice of something extraordinary. A tiny smile tugged at the corners of her mouth, hinting at the hope that had begun to take root within her. Until then, Lucille, she whispered, and then a new confidence before turning her attention inward. Focusing her thoughts, she called upon the newfound power to bend space and time itself. The air around Asperia began to shimmer, as though touched by an invisible heat wave. Her body wavered, the edges blurring and blending with the ethereal haze that enveloped her. The crowd gasped, their surprise giving way to awe as they bore witness to another miracle unfolding before them. By the stars, what could she be if not a goddess? One of them breathed, their voice barely audible amidst the collective intake of breath. Or perhaps a mortal chosen by the heavens, just as she said. Another whispered, his eyes wide with wonder. No different than from you and I. As they debated over her true nature, Asperia felt her consciousness stretch outwards, reaching for the familiar halls of the academy. Her body seemed to dissolve into the fabric of reality, leaving behind only a faint trace of her presence. I see into chapter 4. It's chapter 5. The fading sun cast a warm, golden light across the study. Shelves laden with ancient tomes stood tall and proud like guardians of knowledge surrounding Asperia and Headmaster Theris. A soft breeze from an open window rustled the parchment on the desk as they spoke. Asperia, I must admit, your newfound powers are as fascinating as they are shocking, Headmaster Theris said, his voice a mix of awe and concern. But we must approach this with caution. There isn't anything even similar to this in recorded history. We are truly in uncharted territory. Asperia nodded, her fingers absently tracing the edges of the mysterious object that had granted these abilities, now in the form of a blade. I understand, Headmaster. It's just overwhelming. One moment, I'm a cripple with no hope of ever truly leaving this academy, and the next, I can create reality from my thoughts. Indeed, Headmaster Theris agreed, stroking his beard thoughtfully. You have demonstrated remarkable control so far, conjuring objects, repairing them, even teleporting yourself and others. But you must remember, my dear, that power is a double-edged sword. With every miraculous act, there is potential for disaster. Disaster? Asperia echoed, her heart racing at the thought of what she might accidentally unleash. Yes. What if you were to lose control and unintentionally create something dangerous? Or worse, what if others discovered your abilities and sought to exploit them for their own gain? Headmaster Theris's eyes bore into hers, emphasizing the gravity of his words. Monarchs across Nethelos have dedicated a significant portion of their treasure learning how to manipulate others. For whatever powers you've gained, you are still very much human in your thoughts and feelings. Asperia clenched her fists, frustration simmering within her. She knew he meant well, but it felt as though he was placing limits on her once more, just as when she began to feel free. I get it, Headmaster. You want me to hide my powers, to be cautious and responsible. But don't you see? For once I have the potential to change not only just my own life for the better, but the world around me. Asperia, he sighed, his voice heavy with concern. I care about you deeply and only wish to protect you. The world can be cruel, especially to those who are different. Not only to those they perceive as lesser, but also to those they see as greater. Your powers are a gift, but they must be wielded with wisdom and caution, and discretion. She swallowed hard, struggling to temper her own feelings against her mentor's obvious wisdom. Asperia knew he spoke the truth, but it was difficult to accept. Promise me, Headmaster Theris said softly, reaching out to grasp her hand. Promise me that you'll be careful. Asperia hesitated before nodding. I can promise, Headmaster. Good, he replied, his grip on her hand tightening briefly in reassurance. Now, let's rest and begin our studies tomorrow. There is so much to learn, and your newfound abilities may yet prove useful in unraveling the mysteries of this world. Asperia couldn't help but feel the pull of her powers, like a whispered secret begging to be revealed. She knew the road ahead would be fraught with challenges, but she also knew that for once, she had the power to change the course of her destiny. As she sat on her bed, she found herself longing for a moment of solitude, away from everything to reflect on the day's events. She had been cooped up within the academy for years, and it was doing little to settle her mind right now. Her newfound powers were exhilarating, but they also came with a heavy burden. The headmaster's wise words shouldn't be tossed aside. The man had been like a father to her. Not once in her life had he ever tried to manipulate or control her. Inhaling deeply, she closed her eyes and focused on the image of a familiar clearing in the woods that lay just beyond the church grounds. Once she saw it from a distance as she repaired the church. With a pulse of energy, she found herself standing amongst the trees, leaving crunching beneath her feet. Asperia marveled at the beauty of her surroundings, taking in the way the fading sunlight filtered through the canopy, casting dappled shadows on the forest floor. The air was cool and refreshing, scented with the earthly aroma of damp soil and the faint perfume of wildflowers. A symphony of bird song filled her ears, accompanied by the gentle rustling of leaves. As she wandered deeper into the woods, a soft voice called out to her from behind. Asperia, is that you? Turning, Asperia was greeted by the sight of Lucille. With her golden hair drifting down her back and her deep blue eyes filled with concern, she was a vision of celestial beauty. Her delicate features were etched with worry, and her slender hands clutched a woven shawl tightly around her shoulders. Lucille, Asperia murmured, her voice catching slightly. I didn't expect to see you here. Neither did I, Lucille replied gently, stepping closer. But I felt a sudden urge to come to this place, as though the stars themselves guided my path. She paused, searching Asperia's face. You seem troubled. Asperia hesitated, torn between her desire to confide in Lucille and her promise to Headmaster Theris to be cautious around those who might seek to exploit her power. Sensing her reluctance, Lucille reached out a hand, her fingertips brushing lightly against Asperia's cheek. "Please," she whispered, her eyes pleading, "allow me to share your burden. If this is truly a gift from the stars, it is the least I can do to support you as the Star Speaker. I don't want you to feel alone with all of this." Swallowing hard, Asperia finally relented. I'm not sure what to make of these powers," she began, her voice barely audible. "They're incredible, but also dangerous, and I'm afraid of what might happen if I make mistakes. It was all excitement at first, but now everything's begun to settle in. I'm worried I'm not the best person to wield such power." Lucille's expression softened, her gaze filled with compassion rather than fear. "Oh, Asperia," she murmured, drawing her close for an embrace. "You are stronger than you know, and I have faith in you. You will find a way to use your gifts wisely. You've used them for nothing but kindness thus far." As Lucille held her, Asperia felt a warmth spread through her chest, her earlier apprehension slowly melting away. In that moment, she realized how much she cared for this woman who had seen past her disability when they first met, and treated her with kindness and respect. And as they stood there amidst the twilight shadows, she juggled her feelings about her powers with her new, in some ways even stranger, feelings toward this woman she had only just met. Lucille gently pulled back, placing her hands on the young woman's shoulders, and looked into her eyes. "Asperia, I know you are strong and capable, but these powers, I would be lying to you if I didn't say they make me worry." "Why?" Asperia asked, a hint of defensiveness in her voice. "Hurt too?" "Because they might attract unwanted attention," Lucille explained, her tone gentle but firm. "There are those who would seek to use such power for their own gain, and they would not hesitate to harm you in order to obtain it. I saw it with my parents. Kingdoms constantly courted their influence to use them to suppress their adversaries, and in the end they lost everything because of it." Asperia swallowed hard, her heart heavy. She knew the world was full of people who sought power at any cost, and she was not naive enough to believe that she was somehow exempt from danger. "Lucille, I promise you, I will be careful," she whispered. "Not only careful with your powers, but also with your heart," Lucille added, her eyes shimmering in the fading light. "I don't know why, but I cannot bear the thought of you being hurt, either physically or emotionally." As she spoke, Lucille's hand slid up to cup Asperia's face, and in that moment, mere inches apart, Lucille allowed her true feelings to surface. "Asperia, I know this may seem sudden, but I feel an overwhelming connection to you, as if we were meant to find each other," she confessed, her voice barely above a whisper. "From the moment I laid eyes on you, my heart recognized you as someone incredibly dear to me. It is as if the stars themselves have written our story, guiding us to this very moment, and implanting the significance of it in my mind. I know this sounds probably very strange. It is strange to me too, but I feel as though we've known each other for so long despite only having just met." "Lucille," Asperia breathed, her heart pounding in her chest. She felt a mixture of elation and discomfort at the priestess's confession, unsure of how to respond. "Please do not feel any pressure to reciprocate my feelings, but know that they are genuine and heartfelt," Lucille continued, her eyes searching for Asperia's for any sign of rejection or discomfort. "I believe that my ability to read the stars have granted me fragments of insight into our future, and have seen us together, bound by love and fate. It's caused these feelings to pour into the present. I'm sorry if telling you this has made you uncomfortable, but I don't want to hide anything from you." Asperia knew this sudden confession should upset her, but was also keenly aware that for some reason it didn't. In that instant, she understood exactly what Lucille meant, and she could not deny the sudden, unexplainable connection that had formed between them. She felt a similar pull, but in her whole life, she'd long accepted that no one would ever care for her in this way. Even before she gained the powers, even when she was still disfigured, this woman still looked at her like a normal human. As a woman. Even though it was sudden and undoubtedly odd, this woman's affection was intoxicating to her. "Lucille, I cannot explain it either, but I feel this too. she whispered, her voice quivering with emotion. This connection, this bond. I still want to take things slowly so we can grow into them naturally. Give me a bit of time. It's just all so sudden. These powers, these feelings between you and I seemingly appearing from thin air, just as this magic did. My mind is struggling to keep up. Of course, we should take things slowly. As slowly as you need, Lucille murmured, their foreheads touching as they shared in the wonder of their newfound affection. As she spoke those words, a sense of peace washed over Asperia. I have spent my entire life feeling trapped and helpless, unable to fully participate in the world, Asperia confessed, her voice wavering. I have been held back not only by my broken body, but by the doubts and fears that have haunted me since my parents sold me to the academy. Asperia, Lucille whispered, you have faced adversary and discrimination I couldn't possibly understand. Yet you have persevered, refusing to allow the judgment of others to define you. With this power, you could have immediately sought vengeance, become a tyrant all over Nethalos. But you chose to be kind to strangers instead. That is a rare and beautiful gift, every bit as amazing as the magic, perhaps even more. Asperia couldn't hold it back anymore. All the weight of her struggles came crashing down on her, and she felt she could finally share them with someone other than the headmaster. She hugged Lucille tightly, sobbing into her shoulders. Lucille stood quietly, stroking her hair, and saying nothing. She waited patiently for Asperia to let everything out. After a few minutes, Asperia released her and took a step back, smiling and wiping away the remaining tears. Thank you for that, she said. Lucille strode over to a fallen log, sitting down and patting the spot beside her as the sun began to set. Asperia took the spot, and together they sat silently, watching the sunset. The woods surrounding the church were a sanctuary of verdant hues and soothing sounds. What remained of the sunlight filtered through the dense canopies, casting dapple shadows on the forest floor. The air was alive with the melodies of birdsong, punctuated by the occasional rustle of leaves as small creatures scurried about their business. Asperia inhaled deeply, savoring the symphony of scents that enveloped her. The earthy aroma of the damp soil mingling with the sweet fragrance of blossoms and the sharp tang of pine. It was here, amid the tranquility of nature, that she found some solace from the confusing emotions swirling inside her. Asperia, Lucille called gently, interrupting her reverie. Sorry, Lucille, Asperia replied, shaking her head to clear the thoughts. I was just thinking. About your powers? Lucille ventured, concern lacing her voice. Among other things, Asperia admitted, looking down at her hands. She picked a flower and held it in front of her. She closed her eyes, envisioning the delicate petals in her mind's eye. Slowly, she reached out with her magic, feeling the faintest pulse of life within each bloom. With a deep breath, she carefully urged their colors to shift, transforming the vibrant hues into a more subdued palette. Asperia turned to Lucille, her expression a mixture of pride and apprehension. What do you think? It seems I have a lot of control over how these powers work. Lucille studied the altered flowers for a moment before nodding in approval, her smile warm and genuine. That's so pretty, she said, her voice filled with admiration. But remember, the restraint is just as important as control. Asperia's cheeks flushed at the praise, but she nodded solemnly, acknowledging the wisdom behind Lucille's words. She knew that embracing her powers meant accepting not only their potential, but also their limitations. She noted how similar Lucille sounded to the old, wise headmaster, despite being so young. He would surely approve of her. Thank you, Lucille. Your support means more to me than I can express. Lucille's eyes softened as she gazed at the young woman before her. In good times and bad, know that I'll be here for you. As darkness settled over the forest, casting deep shadows among the trees, the promise of their shared destiny seemed to shimmer like starlight, binding them together through a strange and uncertain fate. And that's the end of chapter 5. I'm actually not sure that my throat is going to make it through all 17 chapters in an epilogue, so we might have to split this book up into a couple parts. So I might read to chapter 9 or 10. Probably a good idea. And then stop. I've also been feeling very tired lately. And I think I've been sniffling a lot, so I think my throat's more sore than usual. I usually have issues with runny noses around this time of year. But for some reason it feels harsher than usual. It's just probably the time of year and the fact that it's been raining nonstop for 3 days. Alright, moving on now. Chapter 6, 1 month later. Lucille stood at the edge of the balcony, her hands gripping the cold stone railing. The view was breathtaking. The moonlit island of Nethalos sprawled out before her like a tapestry woven with threads of dreams and starlight. She took in a deep breath, the crisp night air filling her lungs and bringing her back to reality. It was in this moment of serenity that the vision struck her. Asperia! She cried out as the image seared her mind. Asperia stood before her, panic etching lines into her usually calm face, tears streaming down her cheeks. Asperia's arms were outstretched toward Lucille, her voice barely audible over the cacophony of destruction surrounding them. I had a hard time pronouncing that word, or remembering how it's pronounced. It's weird. You will all pay for this, Asperia roared, her eyes wide with rage. The world seemed to come undone around her. Trees uprooted. Buildings crumbled. The sky itself turned darker than night. Reality seemed to tremble beneath the force of her furious power. Lucille blinked and the vision vanished as quickly as it had appeared. Her heart thudded painfully in her chest, a maelstrom of emotions threatening to consume her. How could she reconcile the gentle woman she knew with this harbinger of chaos in her vision? What could possibly happen to bring this about? Is everything all right, priestess? A concerned voice called out from behind her. Lucille turned to see one of her followers standing by the door, his brow furrowed with worry. Yes, thank you, she stammered, forcing a smile onto her lips. I just need some fresh air. She tried to sound reassuring, but her voice trembled ever so slightly. Her follower nodded, revealed that Asperia was there to visit her, then hesitated a moment before leaving her to her thoughts. Lucille leaned against the railing once more, her knuckles turning white as she fought to understand what she had seen. Could it have been a warning, she wondered, her thoughts racing. She knew that Asperia possessed immense power, but she had shown restraint and had a good heart, using her abilities to help those around her. But what if, somehow, she lost control? What if the weight of all the discrimination and persecution she faced finally broke her spirit with bitterness? Or perhaps, Lucille thought with a shudder, I am the one who will push her to such an act. The idea terrified her more than anything else. If her own actions could lead to such devastation, how could she trust herself? How could she even begin to share this vision with Asperia, knowing that doing so might set them both on the path to ruin? As Lucille stared out over the land below, her heart heavy with the burden of her vision, she realized that she had a choice to make. She could keep the secret locked away within her, allowing fear to rule her actions, or she could confront it head-on, seeking the truth and working together with Asperia to prevent the future she had seen. What good were visions if they couldn't be changed? Wasn't that the purpose on which their church was founded? She had committed to being honest with her, always, even when that honesty wasn't easy. Asperia, she whispered into the wind, her voice barely audible. How can I save you? As Lucille grappled with the weight of her vision, she returned to the area below to find Asperia waiting for her, her eyes filled with concern. The moonlight streaming through the window cast a silvery glow upon her delicate features, making her seem ethereal and otherworldly. Lucille, Asperia said softly, taking the priestess's hands in hers. I can see that you're upset. Whatever's bothering you, please share it with me. The intimacy of their touch sent shivers down Lucille's spine, but she hesitated, her thoughts swimming in uncertainty. She searched Asperia's face, seeking solace, but found only an unwavering determination that left her breathless. She couldn't expect Asperia to share her deepest pains and worries with her, if she could not do the same in return. Asperia, I had the vision again, but more clearly this time. You were so angry that you couldn't control your power. You were lashing out at someone or something. I worry about the future, Lucille whispered, her voice weak. But I believe in the wisdom of the stars. More than that, I believe in you. Asperia hesitated for a moment, hit hard by the revelation. But treating the vision as an inevitability, inevitability would not serve them in avoiding it. Instead, she would treat it as a warning she should heed to the best of her ability. I believe in you too, Asperia replied, her voice steadied. If there's anything we can do better to prepare ourselves for what lies ahead, we'll do it together. We can overcome this. Lucille took a step back. Lucille took a deep breath before sharing her idea. Perhaps you could create a magical curriculum at the academy. You could be the professor, teaching others not only how to wield power, but also the science behind it so they may understand its effects on the world. Asperia's eyes widened in surprise, but soon softened with gratitude. That is a great idea. If I share my powers with others, it will prove that I don't intend to become some kind of tyrant and rule over everyone as this goddess they've invented. Sharing the power with all those who have different philosophies and values could keep all our egos in check, too. All right, let's go bring the idea up with Headmaster Theris right away. If we teleport there now, we'll catch him before he heads off the bed. With Lucille's support, Asperia approached Headmaster Theris, presenting the proposal with fervor and resolve. Though his brow furrowed with concern at the potential consequences of spreading this power around to others, he saw the passion burning in both their eyes and ultimately agreed, willing to face the criticism that would surely follow. Very well, he said gruffly. I will support your endeavor. I will certainly get pushback from the kingdoms for setting the precedent of allowing Wyndham to hold higher positions in academia. But it is well past time for the world to change, including backwards ideas such as these. Old men cling to old familiar ways. Some may come around willingly, but others may lash out. Just be prepared for that. Asperia wrapped her arms around his neck, hugging him tightly. Thank you, Headmaster. In the days that followed, Asperia set about establishing her school of magic within the academy. Her volunteers were few at first, outsiders drawn by curiosity and a desire for knowledge. But as word spread of her unique approach to teaching, merging magical prowess with scientific understanding, the ranks swelled with eager learners from all walks of life, putting their names on the list of those who wished to participate. That women and commoners were encouraged to apply made waves across all Nethalos, inspiring many and infuriating others. Asperia intended to give some of her powers to her most compatible students, bestowing upon them rudimentary types of magic they could wield under her watchful eye. As they practiced, she could guide them in controlling their newfound abilities, emphasizing the importance of restraint and responsibility. Lucille watched from the sidelines, her heart swelling with pride at the sight of Asperia shaping the future of magic in Nethalos. Though the shadow of her vision still loomed over them, she clung to the hope that together they could rewrite destiny and build a better world for all those who called it home. Asperia stood, surveying the space that would be transformed into her school of magic. She had chosen a quiet corner of the campus, ringed by ancient trees and flower beds, their blossoms swaying in the gentle breeze. It was a place that felt alive with potential, much like her students themselves. Before gaining her power, she would often sit there alone and study, away from the judging eyes of visitors. Here, she murmured, extending her hand palm up, as a shimmering doorway materialized before her. The portal led directly to the church, allowing easy access for all those who wished to partake in both spiritual, magical, or scientific learning. Magic is an extension of our world's natural energies, she explained to those who gathered to watch. It is only fitting that we study it alongside the teachings of the church if you so choose. Very little separates the scientific from the spiritual in a world where magic exists. Her curriculum was meticulously crafted, blending theory with hands-on practice. Students would learn about the principles of elemental manipulation, the art of illusion, and the ethics of surrounding magical use. They would delve into the intricacies of spellcasting, exploring how incantations, gestures, and willpower combined to create potent effects. As word of her innovative approach continued to spread, even more eager learners flocked to her. Among them were Priscilla and Frond, two individuals whose lives had intertwined with hers in various ways. Priscilla, a kind-hearted woman with an innate desire to help others, had long been a friend and confidant to Lucille. Asperia saw in her a well of empathy and compassion, traits that would make her an invaluable asset in the realm of healing magic. Priscilla, Asperia said softly, meeting the other woman's eyes. You have a gift for understanding people, for feeling their pain and offering solace. I believe you can channel this ability into healing magic, using your connection to others to mend wounds, both physical and emotional. You will need to study anatomy and understand the physical body to use the power to its fullest. Thank you, Asperia, Priscilla replied, her eyes shining with determination. I will do my best. Frond, on the other hand, was an enigma. A follower of the church who was infatuated with Priscilla. He had also proven his dedication to their cause over time. He seemed to have improved when it came to Priscilla as well, though Asperia had her doubts. Lucille believed that everyone deserved a chance at redemption, and Frond was no exception. She convinced Asperia to include him as well, since he wanted to help. Frond, she said, addressing him with a steely gaze. You have shown yourself capable of great devotion. I believe that, if guided properly, your dedication can be harnessed for the betterment of everyone, though I can't say for sure what form your magic will take. Your faith in me is unexpected, given how I behaved towards you when we first met, but I am grateful, Frond murmured, his brow furrowed in thought as he pondered the path set before him. Asperia nodded, satisfied with the beginnings of her fledgling school. As students filed through the magical doorway, their faces alight with excitement and curiosity, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. Together they would shape a new era of understanding and cooperation, breaking down the barriers that had held so many back. Let us begin, she declared, her voice ringing out across the courtyard. Asperia stood before the gathered students, her heart heavy with the weight of expectation, yet buoyed by the potential that waited to be unlocked. Silence filled the air as everyone waited with bated breath to hear Asperia's first official words as their professor, setting the scene for a moment that would change their lives forever. Today, she began, her voice firm and resolute, we take our first steps toward a new world, one where magic is understood and respected and wielded responsibly. She locked eyes with each of them in turn, ensuring their commitment matched their own. Remember that the powers some of you are about to receive are not self-serving. They are tools to be used to improve everyday lives, to heal the sick, to put out a fire, to repair a collapsed building. The students nodded, their expressions solemn. Asperia allowed herself a small smile before raising her hands, palm outward. A shimmering cascade of light burst forth, enveloping each student with its warm embrace. As the light receded, they found themselves imbued with newfound abilities, an exhilarating rush of energy coursing through their veins. Priscilla was among them, her eyes wide with awe as she felt the power of empathy and healing settle within her. She reached out tentatively, brushing her fingertips against the arm of a fellow student who had sustained a minor injury during training. Almost immediately, the bruise faded, leaving unblemished skin in its wake. Remarkable, she whispered, tears of gratitude brimming in her eyes. Use this gift wisely, my friend, Asperia cautioned, placing a hand on Priscilla's shoulders. Healing can bend more than just flesh. It can soothe a troubled spirit as well. Frond's experience, however, was entirely different. As the magic washed over him, he felt an inexplicable pull toward the shadows, an affinity for the darker aspects of life. By filtering the power of healing through his own desires, he had been granted the power of necromancy. Frond, Asperia said softly, concern furrowing her brow. Are you well? Fine, he replied, his voice tight with suppressed emotion. Just adjusting. He would keep the secret from her, at least for now, until he can understand what happened and why. The other students reveled in their newfound abilities, discovering affinities for elemental magic such as wind, fire, water, and lightning. They practiced with giddy excitement, sparks flying and gusts of wind swirling around them as they honed their skills under Asperia's watchful eye. Remember, she reiterated as they experimented with their powers, these gifts are not for personal gain or amusement. They are for the good of everyone, for the defense of our people and the preservation of peace. As the students continued to practice, Asperia found herself watching Frond closely, a nagging unease settling in the pit of her stomach. She had hoped her faith in him was not misplaced, and his devotion would ultimately lead him down the right path, just as Lucille's had done for her. For now, though, she would focus on guiding these fledgling mages toward a brighter future, one where their talents would be celebrated rather than feared. She turned back to her students, prepared to help them navigate the pitfalls and challenges that lay ahead. For they were the key to a new age, and she would do everything in her power to ensure their success. Priscilla's eyes shimmered with gratitude as the warmth of her new abilities coursed through her veins. She'd always possessed a gentle heart, and now she could use that gift to truly heal others. As she looked down at her hands, she marveled at the newfound potential they had. "Hesperia," she whispered, "I can't thank you enough. This is incredible." Hesperia smiled at her friend, pleased to see her so content. "You deserve it, Priscilla. Your empathy and kindness make an ideal power for you. Use these powers wisely, and I know you'll make a difference." Meanwhile, Frond appeared considerably less enthused by his unexpected acquisition of a strange interpretation of healing powers. He stared at his hands with a mix of fear and curiosity, unsure of what to make of this dark gift. He knew that he hadn't been meant to receive such power, but perhaps this was an opportunity for him to prove himself to both Hesperia and Priscilla. "Frond," Hesperia said cautiously, communicating to him that she'd realized the nature of his version of the power all along. "I know this wasn't what you were expecting, but I trust that you will use these powers responsibly. Remember my words. Our magic is not for ourselves, but for others. Let that guide your actions." Frond swallowed hard, nodding hesitantly. "I understand, Hesperia. I won't let you down." As the days turned to weeks, the Academy's newfound magical curriculum began to take shape under Hesperia's expert guidance. The once empty rooms were transformed into vibrant classrooms, filled with the laughter and energy of eager students honing their skills. The scent of old parchment and the hum of magical energy permeated the air, a testament to the tireless work of both teacher and students alike. "Remember to focus your energy at the task at hand," Hesperia instructed one young mage, demonstrating how to harness the power of water to her advantage. "Visualize your goal clearly and let the elements bend to your will." "Like this?" the student asked, concentrating intently as a small whirlpool formed in the basin before her. "Exactly," Hesperia replied, a proud smile gracing her lips. "Keep practicing, and you'll be able to manipulate the water on a much larger scale. Imagine being able to save a vulnerable village from flooding or deliver much-needed rain to dying crops." Throughout the academy, similar scenes unfolded as students honed their powers under the watchful eyes of their mentor. Yet despite the triumphs of her fledgling school, Hesperia couldn't help but worry about Frond. He'd begun to fall back onto his previous ways, his intense gaze fixed on Priscilla with an unnerving intensity. "Are you all right, Frond?" Hesperia asked. "Fine," he replied shortly, avoiding her gaze. "I'm just working on controlling my abilities. They're not like anyone else's. The stress is just taking a bit of toll is all. I'll manage." "Very well," she said, though her unease lingered. "Remember, if you need help or guidance, I'm here." "Thank you, Hesperia," he murmured, offering her a forced smile before abruptly leaving. As the weeks turned to months, Hesperia's School of Magic flourished under her careful watch. Students grew more adept at wielding their powers, while bonds of friendship and camaraderie blossomed between them. And yet, amidst the laughter and triumph, the specter of discrimination still loomed large, just as Headmaster Theris had warned her it would. Some in Nethelus whispered darkly about the dangers of teaching women and commoners the secrets of magic, worried they might seek retribution for their previous treatment. Through the arched windows of the academy, a crimson sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the courtyard. Hesperia stood at the center, her keen gaze surveying the students as they practiced their magic amidst the fading light. "Concentrate, Priscilla," she called out, her voice sharp but encouraging. "Feel the energy flowing through you and focus on it, each muscle and bone. Remember your anatomy lessons. The shoulder is a complex part of the human body." Priscilla's brow furrowed in concentration as she held a trembling hand over a scholar's injured shoulder while glancing at a diagram that laid out each specific part of the shoulder. A soft, golden light emanated from her palm, slowly seeping into the flesh and bone. Gradually, the man regained his mobility, and his once stiff shoulder now rotated freely as he smiled. "Excellent work," Hesperia commended with a nod. But as Priscilla beamed with pride, Hesperia couldn't help but turn her thoughts to an uncertain future. "Hesperia, I've been meaning to ask you something," a hesitant voice said, snapping her out of her introspection. It was Frond, his eyes flitting nervously between her and the ground. "What is it, Frond?" Hesperia asked, her tone gentle, sensing his unease. "What if our idea of the greater good differs from those around us? What if my idea of what's good is different from yours?" Magic is an incredible force, Asperia began, her voice measured. Yes, there are risks involved. That is why we must educate ourselves and learn to control our abilities. We will face challenges, both from within and without. But sometimes you have to trust yourself, that you're doing the right thing. Even a power like yours has so many ways it can be used for good, but you ultimately have to decide what that means. Braun nodded, and Asperia could see the fear dissipating from his eyes, replaced by steely resolve. At least for now. Right, he murmured before rejoining his classmates. It's the end of chapter 6. I'm about to get into chapter 7 here. I'll probably read the chapter. I don't know. We'll see how I feel after reading this chapter. Get some sips. Oops. Chapter 7, 6 months later. The grand hall of the academy shimmered with enchantment, reflecting the magic that now wove its way through the very foundation of Nethelos. Crystal chandeliers hung from the lofty ceiling, casting a warm glow of magical luminescence over the guests that filled the room below. A myriad of colorful banners adorned the walls, representing each of the kingdoms present at the banquet. The tables were set with silverware and fine porcelain, laden with delectable dishes that filled the air with a tantalizing aroma. Guests dressed in their finest attire mingled with one another, exchanged pleasantries as they sipped wine from crystal goblets. Among them was Lucille Starspeaker, the priestess who had brought them all together under the banner of peace. She wore a flowing gown of midnight blue, embroidered with intricate patterns of silver thread that seemed to dance like stars in the night sky. Despite the jovial atmosphere surrounding her, Lucille's heart was heavy with worry. She couldn't shake the nagging feeling that her vision, the one she'd fought so hard to prevent, was still lurking on the horizon, waiting for the perfect moment to manifest. As laughter and conversation filled the hall, Lucille withdrew into herself, her thoughts consumed by the image of destruction that had haunted her for dreams. "Are you all right, Lucille?" a concerned voice asked, jolting her back to the present. "Ah, yes, thank you," she replied, offering a small smile to the fellow guest. "I'm just overwhelmed by it all, I suppose." "Understandable," the guest said sympathetically, before moving on to speak with others. The weight of her responsibility pressed down on Lucille's chest, making it difficult to breathe. She silently cursed herself for entertaining such negative thoughts on a night meant for unity and celebration. Her fingers fidgeted with the loose thread on her gown, as if unraveling it would unravel the knot of fear lodged in her throat. "Lucille," a familiar voice whispered, drawing her attention. Asperia, her beloved partner, and the most powerful mage in Nethelos, stood beside her with a reassuring smile. "You've done everything you can to prevent your vision from coming true," she said softly. "We'll face this together." Lucille nodded, feeling a glimmer of hope spark within her heart. She allowed herself a brief moment to bask in the warmth of Asperia's presence, the love that flowed between them like a lifeline. But even as they stood there, hand in hand, Lucille couldn't help but wonder if it would be enough to save them from the darkness that threatened to consume everything they held dear. As the banquet progressed, Lucille found herself standing before the assembly of kings. She cleared her throat and began to speak, her voice wavering ever so slightly. "Your Majesties, I have gathered you all here today to discuss a great matter of grave importance. We must all work together to guarantee a great future for all of Nethelos." The kings shifted in their seats, exchanging glances with one another as they listened intently. Lucille continued, weaving together the terms of the peace pact. She spoke of an alliance between the kingdoms, promising that the mages of Nethelos would aid each kingdom equally in times of need. In return, she asked for their commitment to uphold justice and maintain order, not just for some, but for all, fostering an environment where mages could live without fear of persecution. "Your cooperation would not only ensure the safety of our people, but also help to prevent a calamity that has been foreseen in the stars," Lucille concluded, her eyes shining with conviction. "A warning we must heed." A tense silence swept through the room, leaving the fate of the peace pact hanging in the balance. It was then that King Salahan of Belmar rose from his seat, his brow furrowed in dissent. "While I respect your intentions, Priestess Lucille, I cannot commit to my support to this pact, he stated firmly, a storm brewing behind his eyes. May I ask why, Your Majesty? Lucille inquired, her heart pounding in her chest. This was the last man she wanted to have to face tonight. It took all of her courage not to shrink away in fear. She had to stay strong for Hesperia. Frankly, I believe that signing this pact, we are merely trading one form of control for another, King Salahan said. Allowing mages to hold sway over our decisions could very well lead to the same tyranny we seek to prevent by coming here. No offense to you or the mages, but history has shown us that power can corrupt even the purest of souls. This is no small amount of power. Lucille felt a chill crawl up her spine, the memory of her dark vision threatening to engulf her. She tried to push it aside, focusing instead on King Salahan's concerns. Your Majesty, I assure you that our intentions are pure. We seek only to protect and preserve our world from destruction. Forgive me, priestess, the king replied, his tone unyielding, but I cannot place the future of my kingdom in the hands of those who wield such immense power. The risk is simply too great. The room seemed to collapse around Lucille as she struggled to find words that would sway the stubborn king. She could feel the weight of her vision bearing down upon her, suffocating her with its inevitability. But even as despair threatened to drag her under, she knew she couldn't give up. To do so would be to surrender to fate itself. Please, Your Majesty, she implored, her voice cracking with emotion. I understand your fears, but we must work together to overcome them. Only then can we hope to create a better future for our people. Your voice will be a part of that. King Salahan stared at her for a moment, his steely gaze piercing through her very soul. He did not bother to answer, firm in his decision, leaving Lucille feeling more alone than ever. Hesperia, sensing the growing tension in the room, stepped forward with a reassuring smile on her face. Her lilac eyes seemed to emit a soft glow as she addressed King Salahan and the other monarchs. Your Majesty, I understand your concerns. However, allow me to clarify that magic in itself is not inherently dangerous or threatening to anyone. It's a tool. She paused, observing their reactions before pressing the point further. Indeed, she continued, her voice firm yet gentle, it is how we choose to wield this tool that determines its effects. The mages at the Academy have devoted their lives to learning and honing their skills for the betterment of society. Our goal is to work hand in hand with the kingdom so that together we can build a brighter future for all of our people. Despite Hesperia's words, skepticism still lingered in the air. Inquisitive murmurs echoed through the banquet hall as the kings exchanged wary glances. King Salahan, his brow furrowed, leaned back in his chair and crossed his arms over his chest. Tell me, Lady Hesperia, he inquired, his voice tinged with suspicion. If I were to attack the Academy and the Church, would you use your magic to overwhelm my forces? Hesperia hesitated, her eyes narrowing as she weighed her response. She understood the king's question was a test. As a challenge to prove her intentions and the true nature of her powers. With steely determination, she looked straight into King Salahan's eyes. Your Majesty, if it came to such a dire situation, I would do everything in my power to protect the Academy and the Church, along with the innocent lives within them, she replied, her tone even. King Salahan scoffed, shaking his head. That, Lady Hesperia, is precisely the problem. You mages are just as human as any of us, prone to anger, vengeance, greed, and all the other weaknesses that come with being human. Look at your own red cheeks and trembling hands at my mere mention of threatening those you care about. How can we trust that you won't use your magic to further your own interests or exact revenge on those who have wronged you? The banquet hall seemed to hold its breath as Hesperia's words hung in the air. She'd made a misstep and felt a sudden surge of guilt. Lucille, her heart pounding in her chest, clenched her hands into fists beneath the table. She knew that King Salahan's words were a reflection of the fears that had plagued her own mind for so long. The very fears she had sought so hard to overcome. Asked me if I wanted to continue watching. As the debate continued at the table, the tension was palpable. Palpable. The kings, once jovial and at ease, now sat rigid in their seats as they shouted at one another. Lucille couldn't help but worry that her vision, which had haunted her for so long, might still come to pass. With every objection raised, every doubt voiced, She felt the fragile bonds of trust and unity unraveling around her. But even as the weight of fears threatened to crush her spirit, Lucille knew that she couldn't let them win. She had come too far, sacrificed too much to give up now. Determined to restore hope and understanding amongst the kingdoms, she resolved to press on, whatever the cost. Lucille watched the play of emotions on the faces of the kings as they argued, their voices rising and falling like a discordant symphony. It was clear that, despite their outward displays of respect for the academy and the church, there were private fears simmering beneath the surface. King Theodoric of Estonia leaned forward, his voice firm yet respectful. Your Eminence, I have always admired the work of the Academy and the Church, and we cannot ignore the potential dangers that mage poses to our kingdoms. It is essential that we address these concerns openly and honestly. We must stop pretending that concerns like King Salahan's aren't legitimate. Indeed, added Queen Isolde of Illyria, her words measured and deliberate. We must recognize the power that mages wield and ensure it is used for the benefit of all, not just a select few. You are asking much from us. You must give. Even as the words left her lips, Lucille could see the subtle shift as the Queen's posture, tightening of her jaw, betraying her true feelings. The fear of the unknown, the fear of the mage's powers, had seeped into the hearts of even the most steadfast leaders. Hesperia, however, remained undaunted. She met their gazes with a steady resolve, her voice unwavering as she addressed their concerns. None of our assurances will mean anything if we can't trust one another. Trust? King Salahan asked. Forgive me, Lady Hesperia, but trust is a luxury and a gamble we cannot afford, even when it comes to the safety of our people. Yet without trust, we will never achieve peace, Lucille interjected softly, her heart aching as she spoke the words. She knew all too well how difficult it was to let go of one's fears, to place one's faith in the hands of another. But she also knew that it was necessary if they were ever to heal the wounds that divided their world. As the debate wore on, the true extent of the mage's powers became a topic of heated discussion. Tales of their incredible feats, such as summoning storms with the wave of their hand, conjuring creatures of legend from thin air, were spoken of with equal parts of trepidation and awe. The more the kings learned, the more they seemed to recoil, their eyes narrowing as their fears took root. Such power, murmured King Rylan of Theros, his voice tinged with wonder and ease. It is no wonder our people are wary. Indeed, it is both a blessing and a curse, a balance, Lucille admitted, her own thoughts echoing his words. She had seen firsthand the devastating potential of magic, the destruction it could wreak, and yet she had also witnessed its beauty, its capacity for healing and growth. It was a delicate balance, one that could easily tip in either direction. Then let us strive to maintain that balance, Hesperia declared, her voice ringing out like a clarion call amongst the cacophony of fear and doubt. Together we can forge a new path, one built on understanding and cooperation where there's suspicious and mistrust. Only then can we truly embrace the promise of peace. It has to at least be tried. It is only impossible if it isn't given a chance. Though the path ahead was uncertain, fraught with obstacles and challenges, Lucille clung to those words, drawing strength from them as she steeled herself. She clenched her hands beneath the table, nails digging into her palms as she struggled to maintain a calm facade. The opulent banquet hall, adorned with gold leaf and ornate chandeliers, seemed to close in on her, suffocating her with its grandeur and the weight of her own doubts. Her vision had shown her the terrible consequences that could arise from unchecked power and ambition, and she feared that she had set in motion events that would lead to that very destruction. Your Majesty, King Salahan, you must reconsider, she implored, attempting to keep her voice steady as desperate tears welled in her eyes. The Peace Pact will ensure that we can all work together toward a peaceful future for everyone. King Salahan's face darkened, his eyes narrowing as he glared at Lucille. Don't twist my words. I'm in favor of peace. You asked me to put my faith in mages? No. I know what they are capable of. He slammed the fist on the table, rattling the goblets before him. I refuse to sign any pact that would bind us to such monstrous power. A murmur rippled through the gathering, and Lucille felt the tension of the room rise like a coiled serpent, poised to strike. The other kings exchanged uneasy glances. She could see the delicate threads of diplomacy fraying, threatening to unravel the fragile tapestry of peace they had woven together. "Enough!" declared King Radovan of Vistania, his booming voice cutting through the din. "Let us put it to a vote. All in favor of signing the peace pact, raise your hand." Nearly as one, the kings raised their hands, their faces set in unified determination. For a brief moment, hope flickered in Lucille's heart, only to be quashed by the sight of Salahan's unyielding countenance. He did not raise his hand. "Very well," said King Radovan, his voice heavy with disappointment. "This pact will be all but signed by one." "Mark my words," King Salahan growled as he pushed himself to his feet, his chair scraping against the marble floor like the sound of steel on stone. "You were all fools for trusting in these mages." With a final, contemptuous glance at Lucille and the others, he stormed from the room, leaving behind a palpable wake of anger and unease. Lucille's heart pounded in her chest, threatening to burst from its confines. Had she brought them closer to peace, or had she only sown the seeds of discord herself? The memory of her vision haunted her, casting long shadows over her thoughts and tainting her every decision with doubt. She shook her head, trying to dispel the darkness that threatened to consume her. No, she would not give in to despair. She had come too far, fought too hard, to let one man's stubbornness stand in the way of their dreams. The last echoes of King Salahan's footsteps disappeared into the vast corridors, leaving a hollow silence that hung heavily in the air. The meeting had adjourned, and Lucille could feel the weight of her responsibility pressed down on her shoulders. Doubt and fear coiled around her heart like a venomous serpent. Asperia approached her, her eyes filled with a quiet determination, and somehow managed to bring a measure of calm to Lucille's chaotic thoughts. "Lucy," she said softly, taking both her hands in her own. Her touch was warm, grounding, and a lifeline amidst the turbulent sea of emotions that threatened to sweep Lucille away. "You cannot let one man's fear dictate your actions. You have brought together nearly every kingdom in Thalos, united them in a cause that was once thought impossible. That is no small feat. Let yourself be proud of that. Even magic couldn't accomplish this, but you did." "Yet my vision, what if I set us on a path to ruin?" Lucille whispered, her voice strained and weary. She could not escape the nightmarish images that assailed her whenever she closed her eyes. Asperia's screams of agony and despair that seemed to echo through her very soul. "Lucille, trust in yourself and the vision of the stars that guide you," Asperia urged. "King Salahan has chosen his own path, but we must continue on ours. We will prepare for any outcome, but we cannot let fear paralyze us. He's not wrong to be cautious. In time, he will come around. Once he sees for himself, we meant what we said." "Asperia, my love," Lucille said, her voice breaking as she looked into the unwavering gaze of the woman who had become her anchor in the storm. "I can't bear to see you hurt." "You've done everything you can," Asperia replied, her voice steady and resolute. "And that is why we must keep moving forward, together. Let those who would stand against peace come to see the errors of their ways. As long as we stand united, there is nothing we cannot overcome." Lucille drew a deep breath, feeling the tight knot of anxiety within her chest begin to unravel, ever so slightly. She could see in Asperia's eyes the same fire that had ignited her own heart once before, the same tenacity and determination that were capable of toppling empires. "Very well," Lucille said, her voice trembling but resolute. "We will press forward for the sake of all those who have placed their hopes in us." "Remember, you're not alone in this," Asperia reassured her, giving her hands a gentle squeeze before releasing them. "We do these things together." The shadows of doubt and fear still lingered at the edges of Lucille's thoughts, but for now, she allowed herself to bask in the warmth of Asperia's unwavering support. Together, they would face whatever trials awaited them, and no force, divine or otherwise, would tear them apart. "Thank you, Asperia," Lucille breathed, reaching out to touch her cheek tenderly. "For everything." As the gathered kings began to depart, solemn and contemplative, Lucille and Asperia stood side by side, gazing out into the uncertain future that lay before them. With nearly all the kingdoms in Nethalos united in their cause, perhaps, just perhaps, the world might yet be saved from the darkness that threatened to consume it. And if nothing else, they would face that darkness together, hand in hand, until the very end. It's the end of chapter 7. We're going to take a sip and then we'll read chapter 8. Chapter 8. 2 weeks later. Asperia hurried towards the academy, her heart pounding with anticipation. Her 2-week absence had been filled with mystery and intrigue as she examined what the kingdom of Estonia believed to be a magical artifact, which turned out, as in every other case, to be untrue. Though the days had been long and arduous, she couldn't deny the thrill that came from touching the unknown, and she treated every discovery as though it could be authentic. This was what she had originally wanted to do, after all. Yet her desire for knowledge was tempered by her longing to return to her duties as Headmaster Theris' assistant, and to see Lucille again. Asperia, a voice called out, shattering her reverie. She turned to see a fellow staff member, eyes filled with sorrow. You've returned. Indeed, Asperia replied briskly, now feeling uneasy because of their somber tone. I trust all has been well in my absence. Headmaster Theris, he's... The staff member hesitated, tears brimming at the edges of their eyes. What? Asperia demanded, her heart clenching with dread. What has happened? Speak! Headmaster Theris passed away, they whispered, the words barely audible. It's 2 days ago. No! Asperia's voice broke, her legs giving way beneath her as she crumpled to the ground. The wind howled around her, whipping her hair into a frenzy as if mimicking her inner turmoil. Her mind raced, trying to process the devastating news. It couldn't be true. It just couldn't. Asperia, I'm so sorry, the staff member murmured, kneeling beside her. We all knew how much he meant to you. Just leave me alone, Asperia hissed, struggling to process her grief. To the academy, Headmaster Theris was a figurehead, an inspiring man who held authority over the academy. To her, he was so much more. A mentor, a confidant, and someone who had seen her worth when nobody else would. A father. Asperia, please, the staff member pleaded, their voice wavering. Please let us help you through this. Help! Asperia sneered, her fury rising like a tidal wave. Can you bring him back to life? Just come inside and talk to us. The staff member's tone softened. We're all mourning his loss, but no amount of anger will bring him back. Nothing can bring him back. Get out of my sight, Asperia spat, her voice laden with misplaced anger. The staff member hesitated for a moment before rising, leaving Asperia alone with her grief and bitter thoughts. As the sun disappeared entirely, plunging the world into darkness, Asperia clung to the memory of Headmaster Theris. The man who had believed in her despite her disability and lifted her up despite her gender. He had given her opportunities she never would have dreamed possible. When her own parents had sold her for a few coins as a slave, it was he who had chosen to give her freedom. Now he was gone. She couldn't fathom a world without him, and yet that world loomed before her, cold and unforgiving. Headmaster Theris, she whispered, tears streaming down her cheeks. Braun leaned against the cold stone wall, his heart pounding in his chest as he eavesdropped from a distance. The flickering torchlight cast eerie shadows on her face, accentuating the deep lines of sadness and anger that marred her usually calm expression. He knew she was mourning the loss of Headmaster Theris, but he couldn't understand why she failed to see the potential of her own magic to undo this pain. Asperia, he whispered, clenching his fists. This is my chance to show you what my magic can do. He slipped away, his footsteps echoing softly through the dimly lit corridors. Braun had heard whispers of speculation about his necromancy while studying at the academy, but he never dared to attempt an actual human resurrection himself. He'd only practiced on animals, but the results were promising. Now, however, the stakes were high enough to make it worth trying. If he could only bring Headmaster Theris back, even for a few moments, even if long enough to say goodbye, perhaps Asperia would see him in a different light. As he approached the morgue, Braun's breath hitched. The heavy oak door loomed before him, its metal hinges groaning in protest as he pushed it open. The room was colder than expected, the chill seeping into his bones as he stepped inside. Rows of shrouded bodies lay on stone slabs, each one a testament of the fragility of life. Headmaster, Braun murmured, his voice wavering as he located the body he sought. He hesitated, his mind racing with doubt. What if this went wrong? What if he made things worse? Stop being such a coward, he chastised himself. Asperia will finally respect you. Priscilla will finally see you as a man worthy of her affection. Fighting off his trepidation, Thrawn drew a deep breath and began to visualize his goal into a spell. His words hung heavy in the air, echoing through the room as if haunted by the spirits of the dead. Shadows danced around him, coalescing into tendrils of darkness that snaked toward Headmaster Theris's lifeless form. As the spell reached its crescendo, Thrawn's eyes widened in horror. The shadows were consuming the body, greedily seeping into every pore and crevice as if claiming it for their own. Something was different when using his magic on a human. It was far more complex in ways he hadn't anticipated. Panic welled up inside of him, threatening to drown him in a sea of terror. "Stop!" he cried out, his voice cracking. The magic didn't truly obey him. It was taking a form of its own, outside his will. He hadn't practiced this kind of powerful spell enough. He wasn't ready. He pulled back, trying to cancel the transformation. But the spell had taken a life of its own, and Thrawn was helpless to do anything but watch, his heart hammering against his ribcage like a caged bird desperate for escape. The doors of the Academy's morgue burst open and a twisted, monstrous figure stumbled out. Its face was contorted in anguish, its limbs jerking unnaturally as been controlled by unseen things. The students who had been milling about the hallways screamed and scattered like frightened birds before a predator. "Headmaster Theris?" Asperia whispered, her heart lodged in her throat. She was on her way to see his body. She couldn't believe what she was seeing. The man who had nurtured and guided her was now a grotesque abomination. But there was no mistaking the familiar feature beneath the writhing shadows. "Asperia, run!" one of the students shouted, grabbing her arm and trying to pull her away from the approaching horror. But she shook him off, her eyes never leaving the tormented visage of Headmaster Theris. "I can't," she replied, determination cracking through her fear. "I have to help him." "Help him?" the other student scoffed. "Asperia, whatever that is, it's not the headmaster anymore." "Then leave," Asperia snapped. She didn't have time for this, not when the man who had been like a father to her was suffering so terribly. "Asperia, this is madness. We have to evacuate." The student protested, but she ignored him, focusing instead on the creature that had once been Headmaster Theris. "Headmaster, it's me," she called out, taking a step toward him. "It's Asperia. If you're still in there somewhere, please let me help you." But the monster only snarled, lunging at her with outstretched claws. Asperia barely managed to dodge, falling on the ground. "Damn it," she muttered under her breath, pushing herself back onto her feet. She knew that she needed to act, but the thought of hurting Headmaster Theris, even in this state, was a knife twisting in her gut. "Asperia!" Thrawn's voice rang out from the doorway of the morgue, and she turned to see him standing there, his face pale and stricken. "I didn't mean for this to happen. I swear." "What? You did this? Then help me fix it," she demanded, bitter tears pricking in the corners of her eyes. "All right," Thrawn agreed, his expression filled with both determination and remorse. "I'll do whatever I can." Together they faced the monstrous form of Headmaster Theris, Asperia steeling herself for the difficult task ahead. She drew upon her magic, feeling its familiar warmth seeping into her veins, ready to be unleashed. But when she looked into the tortured eyes of the man who had been her mentor and protector, she hesitated, unable to strike. Her power was godlike, but she couldn't bring herself to use it against the familiar face standing in front of her. "Asperia, we don't have a choice!" Thrawn shouted, his own hands crackling with incomparably weaker arcane energy. "We need to stop him before he hurts someone." "You don't understand," she replied, her voice breaking. "He was everything to me. I just can't." "Asperia, he wouldn't want you to let him rampage like this," Thrawn insisted, his voice gentle despite the urgency of the situation, though the irony of him saying such a thing was not lost on him. "You're strong enough to do this. For him." Taking a shuddering breath, Asperia nodded. She gathered her magic once more, her hands trembling as she prepared to confront the anguished creature that had once been the most important person in her life. "Headmaster," she whispered, her voice thick with love and sorrow, a flood of tears erupting from her eyes. "Forgive me." With a final surge of determination, Asperia's hands glowed with a pulsating light. She steeled herself, remembering the lessons he had imparted on her. his desire for her to wield the magic responsibly, and the importance of protecting others. The sound of panicked students running past them, the scent of charred wood, and the taste of ash in the air only served to reinforce the gravity of her decision. Tears cascaded down her cheeks. I'm so sorry. I've let you down. In one swift motion, Asperia thrust her hands forward, releasing a concentrated beam of magical energy that pierced through the monstrous form of Headmaster Theris. His pain cries were like daggers to her heart, but she held steady, knowing that this was the only way to save him from his torment and prevent further harm to the innocent students he cared so much about. With a convulsive shudder, the creature that was once Headmaster Theris collapsed onto the floor, lifeless once more. Asperia, Braun began, reaching a hand toward her trembling shoulder. Asperia stood amidst the shattered remnants of her world, her hands still trembling with the residual energy from the spell that had ended Headmaster Theris' life. The scent of burnt flesh filled the air, mingling with the undercurrent of despair. She could hear the frenzied whispers and stifled sobs of their fellow students as they huddled together in the shadows. Look at what you've done, Asperia spat, the fury in her voice cutting through the chaos around her. Braun flinched, his gaze flickering between the lifeless form of Headmaster Theris and the seething, tear-streaked face of the woman he had hoped to impress. Asperia, I didn't mean for this to happen, he stammered, his voice cracking under the weight of his guilt. I just wanted to help. Help, she snarled, advancing on him with a fierce glare. You call this helping? You didn't even talk to me first. You violated my trust in the worst way imaginable. Braun's eyes darted around the room, as though searching for an escape from Asperia's wrath. He knew full well a mere snap of her fingers could erase him from the world. He clenched his fists at his sides, his knuckles turning white with the effort of restraining himself. I only wanted to show you, to prove to you that I could be of use to you. I never imagined it would end like this. Your arrogance has cost us dearly, Franz, she said coldly, her eyes boring into his. You should suffer the consequences of your actions. He swallowed hard. Well, what do you mean? Your powers, she replied, her voice icy. If you cannot wield them responsibly, then perhaps you have no right to possess them at all. Asperia, please, he begged, his fear palpable as he dropped to his knees. I'm sorry, I truly am, but don't take my magic away from me. There's potential in it. The spell had worked on the animals I tested it on. I just need more practice. If I can learn to control it properly. Perhaps, she said softly, her gaze never leaving his. That is precisely the problem. You should be less concerned with controlling your power and more with controlling yourself. As the reality of her words sank in, Braun's face contorted with a mixture of pain and resentment. He had sought to earn Asperia's approval, only to bring more pain and earn her scorn instead. His heart twisted within him, consumed by the bitter taste of betrayal. She had made so much effort toward proving herself to everyone. Was he not allowed to do the same? Fine, he spat, the words like acid on his tongue. That's how you feel, then so be it. But know this, Asperia. You will regret turning your back on me. One day you'll wish you had tried to understand me more instead of casting me aside like an enemy. How can I possibly trust you after this? Asperia asked. Maybe, he replied, his voice shaking with suppressed rage. I'm not the only one who's been blinded by their own arrogance. With that, he turned on his heel and stalked away, leaving Asperia to grapple with the ghosts of her past and the consequences of their shared mistakes. Asperia watched him go, her heart constricting painfully. She had not meant for things to unravel so disastrously, for his actions and her own bitterness to drive a wedge between them. As his teacher, she too had played a role. She had to accept that part of the blame belonged to her. She too had played a role in this tragedy. His desire for vengeance against those who had wronged her, her determination to prove herself in a world that sought to keep her down. When it came right down to it, these were the very things that had driven Franz to such desperate measures. She closed her eyes, the enormity of her responsibility as the source of everyone's magic pressing down on her like an oppressive weight. It was a burden she bore willingly, but one that came with the consequences she could no longer ignore. Forgive me, she murmured, her voice barely audible above the distant sounds of students and faculty cleaning out the area. Asperia, a soft voice called out, breaking her trance. Lucille, she replied, her tone weary, yet grateful for her presence in this moment of despair. I didn't hear you approach. Lucille observed, her eyes filled with concern. What happened? Frond tried to resurrect Headmaster Theus, but it went horribly wrong. Hesperia recounted the events, her voice wavering with emotion. By the stars, Lucille murmured, covering her mouth in shock. Where's Frond now? Angry and hurt, Hesperia said with a sigh. I pushed him away, Lucille. I couldn't trust him, and I don't think I can forgive him after what he did. Hesperia, you mustn't blame yourself. Even if you gave him his power, Frond's actions were his own. Yet my own actions have consequences too, she replied, finally accepting the truth that had eluded her for so long. As the source of everyone's magic, I must bear the weight of my choices and the impact they have on those around me. That includes their actions and how they use the power I gave them. Lucille placed a comforting hand on Hesperia's shoulder. You are not alone. I'll always be with you. Thank you, Lucille, Hesperia said. Now, with the headmaster gone, I don't know how I'd get through life without you. It's okay now. You're okay, Lucille said, as she hugged Hesperia tightly, allowing the woman to collapse into her arms and sob. That's the end of chapter 8. We're on chapter 9, so we're halfway through the book, and I'm going to stop here for today. I'm not sure what day I'll finish this on. If I have a weeknight that I don't have to work and I don't have taekwondo, I might pick this up and read it. But there's a possibility it might be next Saturday. Tomorrow there won't be an article on a Sunday. I have an event that I am needed for. So, I'm not sure when my next stream will be. Kind of depends on the work week, which I haven't gotten my schedule yet. I will tomorrow. So watch out for a post tomorrow about this week's schedule sometime late tomorrow. I hope you all have I hope you all have a good rest of the weekend, and I hope you enjoy your Sunday. Good night, everybody.